Hey guys, tonight we dive deep into a day that could very well be your last. A grueling, merciless 24-hour shift building the pyramids of ancient Egypt. Imagine, for a moment, waking in darkness, your rest shattered by shouting overseers whose voices pierce the cool desert air. Your muscles are stiff, your eyes heavy from yesterday's punishing labor. Yes, yesterday, because here, every day is backbreaking. You're no skilled craftsman, you're a common laborer, expendable in the eyes of history. Honestly, let's face it, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, why not drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from and the local time at your place? I love seeing how far these bedtime stories travel. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barely awake, struggling to comprehend the shouted orders. No gentle nudging here. This awakening is violent, abrupt, and unforgiving. Thick dust coats your mouth, your lips already cracked from the dry desert night. You push yourself up from the hard-packed dirt floor of your cramped hut, knowing hesitation will only invite the overseer's wrath. Outside, under torchlight flickering ominously, you see figures stumbling into formation, exhausted men, hollow-eyed and skeletal thin, driven onward not by motivation, but by fear. You're quickly herded toward your breakfast station, though calling it breakfast is generous. A rough wooden bowl is thrust into your trembling hands, filled with something resembling bread. You bite down, grimacing as sand grinds between your teeth. This gritty texture isn't just a nuisance. Historians confirm workers routinely suffered from severe dental erosion. Beside the bowl stands your only hydration for the morning, a cloudy, slightly sour beer. Pure water isn't even an option, teeming as it is with parasites that would happily make your insides their new home. You gulp the beer down, choking slightly at the bitterness, knowing it's better than the alternative, a swift end from cholera or dysentery. In the pre-dawn gloom, you're pushed into a ragged line, thousands strong, already sweating in anticipation of the day's brutality. Some around you whisper in fear, others remain silent, staring blankly ahead, numb from endless repetition. The march begins without ceremony, your sandals sinking into the cool sand, a small mercy soon to vanish. The horizon is just beginning to glow, a harsh red gold, promising relentless heat within hours. As you shuffle forward, you briefly allow your mind to wander, wondering what led you to this moment. Perhaps you're repaying debt, or simply fulfilling your obligatory service to Pharaoh Khufu. Maybe you volunteered, unlikely, but whatever brought you here, it seems absurd now. Around you, fellow laborers falter, stumbling as exhaustion takes hold, even before true work begins. Overseers bark angrily, cracking their symbolic whips, though historians still argue whether they actually struck with regularity or merely used them for intimidation. Either way, you don't intend to test their patience. A shout from ahead snaps you from your thoughts. Someone has fallen and isn't rising. You glance briefly, noting the stillness of the figure lying in the dust. No overseer rushes to help. This is commonplace. Simply the cost of construction. You grit your teeth, forcing yourself onward, eyes fixed ahead, knowing pity or pause only brings danger. Ahead, through the lifting darkness, rises your destination, the sprawling pyramid complex at Giza. Monumental, even unfinished. Even from this distance, the massive, partially completed pyramid casts a forbidding shadow, as if warning you of your insignificance, despite yourself. A shiver crawls down your spine, a primal instinct of fear awakened by the sheer enormity of the task ahead. The sky brightens as the sun breaches the horizon, scorching your back, and you begin to sweat profusely. Sand blows against your raw skin, an irritant now, an agony by midday. It's still early morning, yet your energy is already draining. You feel your breathing quicken, shallow gasps that do little to ease the ache in your chest. Finally, After an eternity of trudging through shifting sands, you're halted by a booming voice, echoed by smaller commands down the line. You're assigned quickly, roughly, to a work crew, a group of similarly dispirited souls. Your supervisor, cold-eyed, stern-faced, explains your role swiftly, leaving no room for questions. There's urgency in his tone, a veiled threat behind each instruction. Your job today involves pulling blocks, massive limestone slabs weighing several tons each, up steep ramps slicked with mud. If anyone falters, the risk is catastrophic, and injuries are as common as flies. You're given no special tools, just ropes of coarse hemp, rough enough to shred palms bloody by noon. The overseer makes it clear this is simple physics, brutal in its directness. Strength, endurance, and precision are your only allies. You take your position, gripping the coarse rope alongside your fellow laborers, each man bracing himself. Your muscles already protest, trembling with exhaustion even before the first stone moves. A call goes out, signaling you to begin pulling. You strain, digging your heels desperately into the sand, feeling every fiber in your body burn. The block shifts slightly, reluctantly, slowly gaining momentum. You're surprised it's even possible. Modern engineers still marvel at how ancient Egyptians managed these feats. But as impressive as this engineering is, the experience is anything but exhilarating. Your joints ache, your vision blurs, and the merciless sun is barely above the horizon. Hours still stretch ahead, each more brutal than the last. Already, your thoughts are clouded by fatigue and fear. It's abundantly clear that surviving today isn't guaranteed. It's barely even probable. But stopping isn't an option. And so, with aching limbs, sun-scorched skin, and dread pounding in your chest, you brace yourself for what's next, hoping against hope that your body holds out just a little longer. Your muscles scream in protest as you lean into the rope again, pulling with every ounce of strength left in your aching body. It's mid-morning now, and the sun isn't holding back. If you thought the early hours were punishing, the intensifying heat soon corrects that naive assumption. Sweat pours down your forehead, trickling into your eyes, stinging mercilessly. Blinking offers only temporary relief. You wish desperately you could pause, just for a moment, but even a second of hesitation brings snarls and threatening gestures from your overseers. Beside you, fellow workers groan softly, caught between exhaustion and fear. A laborer 2 places over stumbles slightly, losing grip on the rope. Instantly, the overseer snaps forward, whip raised, eyes burning with annoyance. Luckily, or perhaps unluckily, the worker recovers quickly, narrowly escaping punishment. Your stomach tightens in anxious relief. You're beginning to grasp that this isn't just manual labor, it's survival, pure and simple. The limestone block you're pulling is massive, several tons of sheer, unforgiving stone. Historians still debate exactly how these blocks were transported so efficiently, given their absurd weight. Standing here, straining against gravity itself, you wonder if those historians ever considered the simplest explanation: endless, miserable, brutal effort. Ropes fray under the tension, fibers biting deeply into your palms. You've barely begun the day, yet your skin already peels and bleeds from constant friction. To your left, another team of workers is maneuvering a similarly massive stone along a mud-slicked path. Suddenly, someone slips, a slight misstep that swiftly turns disastrous. The enormous slab lurches sideways, momentum building frighteningly fast. You watch helplessly as shouts erupt, panic rippling through the line of exhausted workers. Men scatter, but not all manage to escape. There's a sickening thud as the block crashes heavily into the sand. For a breathless instant, silence reigns before overseers rush in, yelling angrily, cursing the wasted effort. You don't dare linger on the fallen workers. It's best to focus only on your own task. Survival demands ruthless concentration. The grim scene spurs your own group to pull with renewed urgency. Each labored step seems an eternity, the sun beating relentlessly on your exposed shoulders. You glance downward briefly, noting your feet are blistered, raw from sandals that offer minimal protection from scorching sands and jagged rocks. Gritting your teeth, you force away the urge to collapse, knowing full well that fainting here is as dangerous as stepping into crocodile-infested waters. Eventually, mercifully, the overseer signals a short rest, more from necessity than compassion. The ropes are lowered cautiously, and you stumble back, muscles trembling uncontrollably. You're guided roughly toward the shade of a crude canopy, erected hastily from reeds. But shade is generous terminology. The sun's rays find you easily through countless holes, leaving your skin barely cooler than before. You're handed your midday meal, though calling it nourishment is generous. Your lunch consists mostly of stale, sand-infused bread, a single shriveled onion, and another serving of the same lukewarm beer from breakfast. Yet, hunger gnaws so fiercely at your gut that this unappetizing fare seems like a royal feast. Eating is difficult, your swollen tongue scraping against the gritty bread, but necessity outweighs discomfort. As you chew, a sudden commotion breaks the monotonous murmur of exhausted voices. A supervisor strides angrily through the resting laborers, demanding to know who misplaced vital tools. No one responds, each worker's gaze firmly fixed on the sand. This is a common, often dangerous tactic for survival. A worker suspected of sabotage faces punishment severe enough to discourage carelessness. Your pulse quickens. Relieved the supervisor doesn't single you out this time. Yet even as you struggle to swallow your bitter beer, your mind drifts toward the sheer ingenuity and insanity required to build such immense structures. You're not hauling mere building blocks here. Each stone is part of an intricate design, demanding impossibly precise measurements. A single misalignment could compromise the pyramid's integrity, ruining decades of labor and inviting the pharaoh's fury. The pressure isn't just physical, it's psychological torture. The heavy weight of history bearing down on your weary shoulders. Then again, you muse grimly. At least you aren't responsible for these crucial calculations. You're just muscle, replaceable in the grand scheme of Pharaoh's vision. Comforting thought, isn't it? A historian once theorized that pyramid laborers took pride in their work, finding spiritual meaning in their endless toil. Standing here, drenched in sweat, muscles screaming, you'd gladly trade all that hypothetical pride for an hour's rest in actual shade. Nearby, one of your fellow workers mutters darkly about deserting. The idea sends chills down your spine. Everyone knows attempted escape is futile. The endless desert is a lethal prison. Your imagination briefly conjures visions of being pursued by guards, or worse, dying alone amid shifting sands. You shudder, realizing this place, this worksite, despite its terrors, is safer than fleeing into the harsh wilderness. The short break concludes too quickly, an overseer's bark shattering your fleeting rest. Groans ripple through the ranks as laborers struggle upright, staggering back toward the merciless ropes and stone blocks. Your heart sinks, muscles stiffening defiantly in protest. You cast one despairing glance at the sky, the sun barely halfway through its ruthless climb. How can you possibly endure this punishment much longer? Yet endure you must. A second call rings out, and you grip the frayed rope once more. Already raw palms screaming anew. Your legs shake with exhaustion, but there's no turning back. With a grimace of determination or desperation, you pull again, joining countless generations who've suffered in Pharaoh's shadow. Your aching muscles protest immediately as you lean back into the rope, pulling with what little strength remains. By now, the morning feels like ancient history, just another brutal stretch of hours in an endless day. You hardly remember a time when you weren't straining against gravity, moving these impossibly heavy stones. The rope bites viciously into your blistered palms, reopening wounds you'd hoped had begun to heal. Beside you, a worker's feet slip briefly in the muddy path, and the entire team nearly collapses. You hear panicked shouts erupt, overseers screaming in alarm, their voices edged with fury. But somehow, miraculously, the line holds. Your exhausted teammates steady themselves, recovering balance through sheer determination, or perhaps just desperation. Your heart pounds wildly, adrenaline surging uselessly through your body. This isn't exactly the adrenaline rush you'd imagine enjoying. No heroic moment here, just a frantic attempt at survival. A bitter chuckle escapes your lips, though it's immediately choked off by the harsh glare of an overseer nearby. By now, the sun is approaching its zenith, a merciless fiery eye glaring down at the shimmering sands. Your body feels scorched, sweat evaporating as soon as it emerges from your pores. Historians marvel at the Egyptians' ability to work through such intense heat, theorizing that they took strategic breaks or relied on sophisticated hydration methods. Standing here, reality seems far more brutal. Any breaks are fleeting at best, and hydration is minimal, just enough sour beer to stave off collapse. Luxuries like shade or fresh water are distant fantasies, just as you're about to beg silently for relief. Another team nearby experiences disaster. A large stone slips its rope and crashes heavily into the sand, narrowly missing several workers. You're close enough to feel the tremor beneath your aching feet. Shouts and frantic commands fill the air, overseers scrambling to maintain order, workers scatter desperately, eyes wide with panic. The massive block lies tilted awkwardly in the sand, clearly a catastrophic miscalculation that will require hours and countless exhausted men to rectify. You swallow hard, grateful that for now, at least, you weren't in the path of such chaos. Yet you know all too well that your turn might come at any moment. The line between survival and tragedy here is razor thin, defined not by skill or caution, but simply by luck. Glancing at your companions, you see identical expressions of exhaustion and barely contained terror. Everyone senses their fragility, but no one dares admit it openly. Finally, your stone reaches its designated spot, a narrow ledge higher up the pyramid. Another daunting challenge awaits, maneuvering the enormous slab precisely into place. Ramps slicked with mud and crushed stones rise steeply ahead, designed with an astonishing blend of ingenuity and cruelty. You and your teammates must push, drag, and guide the block upward, each inch of progress a small miracle. With trembling arms and aching backs, your group begins to guide the stone onto a slippery wooden sledge. It moves reluctantly, grinding forward at an agonizing pace. Every misstep sends chills down your spine, knowing any error here could spell disaster, not just for the stone, but for the workers caught beneath it. Historians still puzzle over the logistics of these ramps, some suggesting Egyptians flooded paths with water to ease movement, while others argue workers simply dragged stones painfully uphill, inch by unforgiving inch from your perspective. Neither option seems particularly comforting or plausible. This is simply an exercise in misery, with no clever engineering able to spare you from pain. Nearby, another team shouts angrily as their block threatens to topple sideways. Workers strain to stabilize it, but panic sets in quickly. Two men slip and stumble away barely in time, while others push frantically from the opposite side, correcting the balance just moments from disaster. Your breath catches again, throat tightening in anxiety. Moments like these remind you vividly of your vulnerability. Each heartbeat feels precarious, each breath borrowed. As midday arrives, the sun blazes with brutal intensity, directly overhead now, offering no refuge. Your mind drifts again to something you've overheard from veteran workers, a curious local remedy to protect your skin. Crocodile dung mixed into a thick paste and applied liberally. You shudder at the thought, but then glance down at your own red, blistering arms, honestly, right now. Crocodile dung sunscreen sounds strangely appealing, although you can't help but wonder what historian first discovered that peculiar detail. Sometimes truth is stranger and decidedly grosser than fiction. An overseer's voice snaps you rudely from your contemplation, barking harsh orders for precision. The block you're guiding must align perfectly or risk weakening the entire structure. With aching hands and weary minds, your group nudges the slab incrementally upward, each tiny movement requiring monumental effort. Time itself seems suspended, trapped within this endless cycle of exertion and anxiety. After what feels like eternity, the block finally reaches its designated location, fitting snugly against the others with satisfying precision. You and your companions exchange exhausted glances, momentarily proud, though the accomplishment provides little comfort considering the physical cost. And already, the overseer calls impatiently for the next block to be moved. The feeling of pride evaporates instantly, replaced by grim resignation. This work is infinite, demanding everything yet promising little reward, except survival if you're lucky. By now, your skin feels cooked raw, your muscles trembling uncontrollably. The relentless heat feels suffocating, a crushing weight pressing down from above. Your throat is dry and cracked, yet still no fresh water appears. Only another ration of sour beer awaits, along with more gritty bread. Staring upward, you're haunted by thoughts of how ancient Egyptians accomplished such feats year after punishing year. Modern minds might romanticize these monumental constructions, but standing here, raw, beaten, and exhausted, you're painfully aware there's nothing romantic about building a pyramid. The overseer shouts again, cruelly demanding your attention. You stumble forward, dazed and weary, back toward the waiting ropes and stones. The sun seems unmoving, as if deliberately prolonging your torment. You briefly wonder how much more your battered body can endure. Yet, you have no choice but to continue. Survival remains uncertain, each moment threatening collapse, injury, or worse, with dread rising anew. You grip the rope once more, resigned to face whatever brutal challenge the afternoon has in store. You collapse against the rough-hewn stones at the base of the rising structure, gasping for air that feels as thick as the midday heat. There's no respite, though overseers bark orders before you can even draw a complete breath. With little ceremony, they herd you and your crew into a tight circle for what they call a quick orientation. Though no part of this day feels remotely quick or remotely oriented, a gruff supervisor steps forward, sun-bleached whip curled at his side, and begins shouting instructions in a raspy voice that scrapes across your already frayed nerves. "Listen up, you maggot-smelling wretches," he bellows, sweeping his arm toward a crude model ramp carved from packed earth and stone. Ropes go under the blocks, rollers beneath the sledges, and you pull until someone drops dead. His eyes blaze with such fervor, it's a miracle he doesn't ignite on the spot. He brandishes a chipped wooden staff, tracing jagged lines in the sand to illustrate angles and leverage points. You catch snippets about lever mechanics, friction reduction, and something scribbled in the dust that might be inclined plane. In theory, these are simple physics principles. Inclined planes reduce the force needed to lift heavy objects, but in practice, under a merciless sun, you're not convinced the laws of physics are sympathetic to your suffering. Historians still argue whether Egyptians used straight or zigzagging ramps for higher tiers. But from where you stand, covered in sweat and dread, you'd climb any ramp just to escape this orientation. You eye the model ramp, a sloped mound of tightly packed sand and rubble, reinforced by wooden beams hammered into its sides. It rises at what looks like a perilous angle, as if daring you to test its stability. You recall reading that ancient builders might have added water to the ramp surface to reduce friction, a fact scholars debate due to the scarce water supply. But here, water is a luxury reserved for Pharaoh's household, not expendable laborers. You sniff, imagining that momentary coolness, then swallow, instantly reminded why beer, nauseating as it tastes when warm, is still preferable to risking dysentery from the Nile. Next to the ramp model lies a set of wooden rollers, roughly hewn logs split from sycamore or palm trees. They're arranged in parallel lines glistening with a thin sheen of animal fat mixed with limestone powder, intended to ease passage of the stone sledges. You ask yourself who first had the idea to coat logs in rancid fat. a detail so absurd it feels like a bizarre joke at your expense. Yet fringe reports suggest builders sometimes used this greasy concoction to reduce drag, though opinions differ among experts. Some say it was a widespread practice. Others insist it was limited to ceremonial blocks near the casing stones. Either way, the thought of slick logs under the scorching sun makes you shudder, convinced that any misstep could send you sliding off into a bed of jagged rocks. The overseer's demonstration accelerates into chaos. Ropes are thrown haphazardly, rolls of hemp fanning out like oversized rattlesnakes at your feet. You notice the frays and knots in the coarse fibers. This rope was hand-woven by local artisans, strong enough to bear several tons but stiff enough to shred your palms within minutes. Hands already crusted with dried blood and sand from earlier work. You grimace, realizing your skin will be thicker than Egyptian leather by sunset. Suddenly, the supervisor slams his staff against the sand, sending a sharp crack echoing through the worksite. "Any further questions, insects?" he snarls. A younger apprentice tries to raise his hand, face pale, lips trembling as he asks about optimal rope angles to avoid snapping under tension. The supervisor's whip slices through the air, leaving a trail of fear. You flinch, thankful the lash misses, and the apprentice withdraws his question, beaten back by the threat alone. Whether actual lashings were common or mere theater of terror remains a point of scholarly contention. But the intimidation tactic is undeniably effective. Orientation wraps up with a final, horrifying flourish. You're all shoved back into line without so much as a checkpoint to ensure you understood anything. No time is allocated for practice runs. Instead, the overseer bellows, "Move!" and vanishes as quickly as he appeared. You glance at your comrades, eyes wide with the same wordless question. Now what? The model ramp, rollers, and theoretical physics lessons vanish as the vast pyramid looms above you, mouthing silent threats. A veteran laborer with a face like cracked sandstone slopes over to you, voice low and conspiratorial. He points to the thick ropes, then to where the stone awaits, a massive limestone slab sunk into a wooden sledge. "Don't trust the rollers too much," he murmurs. "Sand jumps the gaps, and that slab will stall. Grease the logs if you get water, but keep an eye on that peg beside the block. If it pops, you'll be flattened." His words sting with truth and dark humor alike. You nod. Nodding so vigorously you nearly bang your head on the stone, he adds, almost as afterthought. "And if you think that's bad, they say some blocks needed pulley systems, but scholars still quarrel if these pulleys were ever actually used at Giza." You realize you're clutching a fragment of knowledge that's already contentious among academics. Yet, here it is. Vital for survival. Even so, you barely register the weight of his warning before chiefs blow horns to signal the next phase, hoisting the stone onto the ramp. Immediately, you're hauling once more. Your group braces, back bent, feet dug into a fine layer of limestone dust that seems to cling to every pore. The sledge groans like a wounded beast as you start to pull. Buffalo fat slick logs creaking beneath it. The block jolts forward, teetering eerily. Your heart hammers in your chest. You half expect it to topple and crush you like bone beneath meat. Yet it holds, inching forward despite the sand seeping between rollers. Nearby, another team isn't so lucky. A log slips, the slab shudders, and you hear a terrified shout as a worker scrambles away from imminent doom. Despite your terror, a twisted part of you can't help noting the absurdity of the scene. Here you are, standing in the middle of a vast desert, under an unforgiving sun, dragging a stone intended to be part of a monument that will outlast your dusty bones. It's so ludicrous it almost elicits laughter, if you weren't so busy clinging to survival. Sweat pours into your eyes again, blurring the edges of reality. The overseer's voice rings out, sharp and urgent, demanding precision and speed. Each heave of the rope is accompanied by his jeers. "Faster, you sniveling dogs! Pharaoh won't wait for your pitiful pace." The words slice through the air like the whip you never heard crack, but always feel. You push harder, muscles trembling with exhaustion. as the slab crawls up the ramp, one agonizing inch at a time. The hours slip by without mercy. Your back throbs from bending over the stone. Your shoulders burn as if set aflame. Every breath tastes of dust and desperation. Yet, amid the pain, you cling to every scrap of practical knowledge gleaned from that frantic orientation. Loop the rope under the sled's front. Keep rollers aligned. Watch for frayed fibers that could snap under tension. Each detail, once abstract theory, is now a lifeline against a day designed to break you. Finally, after what feels like an eternity compressed into minutes, the block reaches a ledge halfway up the pyramid's face. You stumble backward, muscles quivering like leaves in a drought-stricken wind. The sense of accomplishment is fleeting. You barely have time to catch your breath before overseers demand the block be guided off the sledge and into place. You and the crew struggle to lever the slab sideways, fitting it flush against its neighbors. A stray finger caught between stones would cost you dearly, but with trembling hands and sweaty palms, you manage the delicate maneuver. The block settles with a muffled thud, a small triumph in the middle of unending torment. For a fleeting moment, the overseer nods in approval before barking, "Next one!" His dismissal sends you back toward the base, heart sinking as you realize orientation is done, but the work is just beginning. Your mind reels, trying to recall nuances from that chaotic briefing. You remember wedge placements to prevent sliding, crude nails to lock stones in place, and the whispered rumor that blocks were sometimes inscribed with the workers' own graffiti in hidden chambers, tiny pleas for mercy carved into eternity. It's dizzying how much you need to know, how much you need to remember, and how rapidly exhaustion erases even the freshest details. But amidst the pain and fear, one fact remains clear. You're bound to this lethal choreography for hours to come, each step a gamble between precision and disaster. The ramp, the rollers, the rope, all the theoretical marvels of Egyptian engineering are now instruments of your suffering, their brilliance overshadowed by the cruel reality that survival here is as uncertain as life itself. With a heavy breath, you ready yourself for the next agonizing pull, hoping the knowledge from this orientation will carry you, for once, in your favor. You barely have time to catch your breath before you're yanked back into position, the massive limestone slab looming before you like an executioner's blade. The overseer's whistle shrieks, a brutal reminder that in this place, mercy is a myth. You grip the coarse hemp rope once more, knuckles white, fingers slick with a mixture of sweat and old blood. Your heart hammers, lungs burning as if filled with fire. Around you, fellow laborers brace themselves in a staggered line, faces drawn and hollow-eyed, muscles trembling under the weight of imminent agony. "Pull!" the overseer barks, voice cold. The slab groans as it shifts, inching forward on its wooden sled. You lean back, planting your feet firmly in the sand, digging deep for every ounce of strength. Your calf muscles seize, protesting the strain, but you force them on. The rope jolts violently, and you stumble, nearly pitching yourself face first into brittle desert earth. Flashes of panic ignite if you fall. The slab could crush you or block the path of those behind. You yank yourself upright, gripping the rope tighter, breath ragged. This is pulling your weight in the most literal sense. Each limestone block is believed to weigh between 2 and 3 tons, a fact that still astonishes modern engineers and lends a macabre fascination to your struggle. Historians still argue whether teams were organized in rotating shifts or labored continuously. But here, continuity reigns. There's no rotation, no reprieve beyond the briefest pauses. Every second you spend breathing without the slab pressing into you feels like a stolen gift. Sweat streams into your eyes, stinging as it mingles with sand. You blink rapidly, tasting dust on your tongue. You remind yourself that these blocks aren't random stones, they're precisely cut. Their surfaces smoothed by copper chisels that wear down faster than your resolve. Fringe evidence suggests builders sometimes stamped blocks with the names of their crews, a quirky, almost tender claim etched into eternity, though whether Giza blocks bear such hidden signatures remains hotly debated. Your crew's heaving forms a grim ballet, synchronized grunts, heaves, and shuffles, each movement a testament to collective endurance. A veteran laborer at the rope's front shouts a cadence, 1, 2, 3, heave, and you follow, muscles contracting in unison. That shared rhythm is crucial. Any deviation can send the sled off course, leading to crashes or worse. A single misaligned roller, a stray pebble, or a moment's hesitation could trigger catastrophe. Suddenly, the sledge jerks violently, friction catching. You grunt through clenched teeth, straining to free the rollers. Sand has infiltrated the gaps, jamming the logs, a maddening delay. Nearby, a laborer taps the rollers with a small branch, a makeshift tool to dislodge debris. You join in, scraping sand free. Though your vision blurs with heat and fatigue, the sun has climbed mercilessly, beating down on your back like a branding iron. Heat stroke claims many here. You've seen men collapse, delirious, their bodies convulsing before being dragged away. An overseer's shadow falls across you, a towering figure wielding a whip. You straighten, abandoning the debris clearing in a panic of obedience. Whether lashings were common or merely a theatrical threat is still discussed by scholars, but the whip's crack echoes in your skull regardless. You resume pulling, every movement fueled by desperation rather than duty. At a sluggish pace, the block inches upward along the inclined plane. Ramps here are built from packed earth and rubble, angled steeply to minimize horizontal distance but maximizing effort. Some experts argue these ramps spiraled around the pyramid. Others insist on straight, extended ramps. As you watch the block traverse your sector, you feel no envy for the architects who argued these points. Your concern is simply keeping each roller in line. Halfway up, your muscles scream in unison, a chorus of agony that drowns out the distant murmurs of the Nile. A sudden sigh escapes you, part pain, part relief, as the slab reaches a small resting ledge. For a heartbeat, you linger in that space between collapse and continuation. Fellow laborers slump against the stone, gasping, hands trembling so fiercely they can barely grip the rope. You catch a glimpse of yourself in another's eyes, hollow, sunken, defiant, but rest is a fleeting illusion. A commanding shout propels you back into action. Set down the block. 3 overseers converge, barking orders on how to pivot the sled off its rollers. You stagger forward, muscles still quivering, and brace against the slab's heavy side, using wooden wedges and brute force. Your team leverages the block sideways into its designated slot. The precise fit is critical. Even a minor misalignment could cause cascading structural failures centuries later. You feel the stone scrape against existing layers, a harsh, grinding sound that echoes in your chest. As the block settles with a dull thud, a stunned hush falls. In that moment, you savor a rare triumph, unspoken pride in a job brutally accomplished. But celebration is cut short. The overseer signals for the next load almost immediately. It's a stark reminder that here, monuments are built on the broken bodies of their makers, progress measured in the exhaustion etched into every line of your face. A brief pause follows. You're ushered to a scattered pile of fresh ropes and a handful of dusty palm refreshments, small wedges of date cake wrapped in fig leaves. You pocket the cake without tasting it. Energy conservation is paramount, and chewing demands precious strength you'd rather save for the next pull, despite the sweat and grime. Even this meager treat feels like a blessing. Nearby, dark humor surfaces in whispered banter. At least the pharaoh won't forget our names, if our bones endure long enough. It's a macabre jest, but camaraderie of this kind is vital. Even in the crushing heat and relentless toil, these fleeting moments of shared levity offer a sliver of humanity. Reclaimed rope in hand, you face the slab anew. The sun begins its descent, but twilight offers no truce. Temperatures remain high, and the day's fatigue amplifies. You remind yourself that 24 hours still lie ahead, and you've just conquered 1/6 of them. It's a grim calculation, but keeping track of time is oddly comforting. Each hour survived is a victory. With a deep, ragged breath. You lean into the rope once again, summoning every shred of strength. The rope shifts in your grip, rough, unforgiving, as you prepare for the next excruciating heave. The overseer's silhouette stands against the glowing sky, whip in hand, ready to drive you onward. Your body whispers of surrender, but your will, forged in the fires of relentless labor, compels you forward, and so you pull, muscles quivering, soul resolute, inching that slab toward its eternal place, each agonizing inch a testament to human endurance against an empire's demands. You trudge forward, muscles still trembling from the last agonizing haul, and arrive at the overseer's domain, a slim strip of shade cast by a hastily erected reed canopy. The air here is marginally cooler, laced with the faint aroma of burning palm oil lamps. Beneath the canopy stand your supervisors, those terrifyingly friendly faces, tasked with ensuring you don't treat this brutal labor as optional. They're draped in crisp linen kilts, surprisingly clean compared to your sweat-soaked tunic, and lean casually on long staffs tipped with polished bronze. Each overseer's staff is crowned with a small loop of braided fiber, its purpose as much symbol as tool. You half expect someone to break into song at any moment, but instead, they exude an unsettling calm. One overseer steps forward, his skin dark with sun exposure, eyes narrowed in a perpetual squint that makes you suspect he never blinks. He smiles, or what passes for a smile in this heat and dust, and extends a hand. You know better than to take it, in this place. Friendly often masks menace. Still, you nod and grasp his calloused fingertips. In a quick, nervous shake, he releases you instantly and pats your shoulder. The motion meant to reassure, but sends a jolt through your spine. There's a rumor among laborers that some supervisors were chosen for their mercurial kindness. Those were said to inspire better morale, yet historians still argue whether genuine camaraderie or pure intimidation drove the project's efficiency. Nearby, another overseer, a woman whose calm intensity almost seems out of place, watches the crews with a dispassionate gaze. She holds a slender whip, just a loop of braided leather with a single tail, more ornamental than functional, or so the whispers go. Scholars debate if lashings outnumbered whispered admonishments, but standing here, beneath her steady stare, it's clear the whip's greatest strength is the anticipation it evokes. You catch yourself imagining its crack, and your heart pounds in sudden fear. The supervisor's shade is small and precious. You sense crews jockeying for position, vying for a moment's respite. You edge closer, leaning into the faint breeze that stirs the reed roof above. The overseers introduce themselves in booming voices that carry across the worksite. "I am Hapi," the first announces, voice as smooth as the Nile's surface at dawn. "And this is Nefer." Nefer inclines her head in greeting, eyes flicking toward your raw, blistered palms. "We trust you'll give Pharaoh your best today," she says, tone almost gentle if you ignore the whip looped at her wrist like an executioner's pet. A light joke drifts from Nefer's lips, or at least what remains of it. You force a humorless chuckle, barely tasting levity as a luxury far above your station. Hapi strides through the crews, tapping each team leader on the chest with his staff's bronze tip. The sound rings like a warning bell, a pat that's equal parts recognition and reprimand. When he taps you, it feels like a benediction, until you realize he's marking you for closer scrutiny. His eyes linger on your rope calluses, as if assessing how quickly those palms might tear again under the next block's weight. He notes your tentative wince, and you brace for his critique. Instead, he nods once and whispers, "Keep it steady," before moving on to the next group. Tiny mercies, you think. Count more here than gold. Nefer circles back, scanning the crews with a detached curiosity. She pauses beside a veteran stone hauler renowned for his uncanny endurance. The man flexes his biceps, smeared with a thin layer of limestone dust that glows white against his bronzed skin. Nefer tilts her head. Our best, she murmurs approvingly. The man offers a toothy grin and a thumbs up, but his eyes dodge yours. They muse over ration adjustments, possibly increasing beer allocation for the afternoon shift. Though some caution that more beer invites more drunken mistakes, you force yourself to listen closely. Knowledge of these shifting policies could buy you seconds of extra rest or a slightly larger serving of bread. Even small gains matter when survival is measured in each aching heartbeat. Suddenly, Hoppy waves his staff, and the overseers stride toward a nearby team that's fallen behind. You watch as Nefer's whip loosens in her hand, the loop flexing ominously. She glances at a worker who dares to wipe tears from his sunburned cheeks, then flicks the whip, its tip crackling in the air, a warning, but not an actual lash. The worker flinches and immediately picks up his pace, fear sharpening his movements like a whip's sting. You swallow hard, heart fluttering, whether or not actual lashings occur regularly. The threat alone is enough to bend even the most stubborn back. The overseers finish their inspection quickly and return to their shaded perch. Hoppy addresses you directly. Remember, he intones, voice softening as if confiding a secret. We're building history. Pharaoh will remember the great stones, but will he remember your names? He might, if you survive to see this day's end. The line between genuine encouragement and cold strategy blurs in his tone. You nod, unsure if you feel inspired or manipulated, or terrified that your name will be written only in a death register. Nefer hands you a small clay token, marked with her personal seal, signifying you've passed the inspection. She leans in and whispers, almost kindly, "Keep this safe. It might mean the difference between a working rest and something far less pleasant." She inclines her head, stepping back before you can respond. The token is heavy in your palm, an object of both hope and dread. As you step away from their shade, you notice that the overseer's presence lingers in your bones. Their stares follow you like vultures circling prey, and the faint echo of the whip's crack reverberates in your mind. You realize that these friendly supervisors are masters of psychological warfare, whipping up terror with the mere suggestion of punishment, dispensing encouragement that tastes faintly of poison. Still, their role isn't purely punitive. In quieter moments, you've seen overseers insist on better meals for injured workers, quietly pointing to extra beer at midday to prevent dehydration, or sharing a glance of acknowledgement when a crew achieves an astonishing feat of coordination. Some laborers claim that a single supportive word from Nefer could drive them to haul twice their usual load. Historians still debate whether this mix of kindness and cruelty was deliberate management or inconsistent temperament, but in practice, it's enough to keep you both terrified and strangely motivated. You shoulder your rope, the overseer's token folded deep in your loincloth, and return to your team. Sweat drips from your brow, stinging your eyes, but there's a renewed edge to your movements, an almost desperate zeal to prove worthy in the overseer's eyes. Their presence, as oppressive as the sun, has tempered your fear into grim determination. You push your aching body forward, ready to face the next block with both dread and the tiniest spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, surviving their scrutiny will bring you one step closer to lasting the full 24 hours. You stumble away from the overseer's scorching watch and trudge toward the meager lunch stations set up beneath another fleeting patch of shade, a few bent palm fronds lashed to wooden posts. Your stomach growls the moment you leave the crush of hauling crews, reminding you that food, however unappetizing, is a vital reprieve in this ceaseless torment. Around you, laborers shuffle forward, gaunt faces lit with relief at the thought of even a few stolen minutes away from ropes and rollers. At the front of the line, you're handed yet another chunk of coarse, sand-speckled bread. Its texture is an abrasive reminder that flour was no precious commodity for common workers. Instead, they needed whatever grains they could afford, often mixed with chaff or leftover husks. This bread is dense enough to crack teeth, but at least it fills your belly. You bite into it, wincing as gritty crumbs dislodge and cascade into your mouth. You chew methodically, mindful that haste might force you to swallow sand that could scrape your throat raw. It's amazing how hunger can transform even the roughest loaves into something resembling a feast. Beside the bread lies a single onion, pale, papery skinned, and fiercely pungent. You peel back a few layers and slice off a small piece, inhaling the sharp aroma. Onions were widely cultivated along the Nile, prized for their ability to add flavor and some vitamins to a monotonous diet. Eating one raw is less about taste and more about survival. The spice cuts through the stale bread and, strangely, staves off minor infections. Historians still argue whether onions truly provided enough nutritional boost to justify their pungency. But here, raw or cooked, they're a rare luxury. Your final ration is the same warm, cloudy beer you've come to accept as a constant companion. Brewed from fermented barley, it's only marginally less foul than the polluted river water it's meant to replace. Yet it's laden with carbohydrates and, crucially, safer than drinking straight from the Nile, where parasites like schistosoma lurk, ready to burrow into exposed skin. Modern medical studies confirm that schistosomiasis afflicted many ancient workers, causing chronic illness that likely shortened lifespans. You lift the crude clay cup to your lips and drink deeply, letting the bitter liquid sluice down your throat. It's lukewarm now, having sat in the sun for hours, but you savor every drop, flooding your body with the small comfort of hydration. As you settle into the shade, you notice the rhythmic creaking of ropes and stones in the distance, even during lunch. The pyramid's relentless assembly continues, as if the structure itself demands constant sacrifice. You lean against a post, closing your eyes momentarily. The coarse fibers of your tunic scratch against your sunburned skin, but you're grateful for any physical boundary between you and the burning air. A fellow laborer plops down beside you and nudges your elbow. He's one of the seasonal recruits. Stories say he returned each year after harvest to work in Giza's quarries, lured by the promise of higher beer rations and temporary exemption from village taxes. His name is Amhotep, though he sometimes jokes that he'd trade every grain of barley for a comfortable home hearth. You offer him a small nod of solidarity as he unwraps his own bread and onion. Together, you begin to eat in near silence, punctuated only by groans from workers who've collapsed just beyond the canopy. A man lies motionless a few steps away, his team debating whether to risk drowning his convulsions with water or leaving him be. No consensus emerges. You glance away, focusing instead on your meager meal. The musky scent of curing fish drifts from another station, but the catch was likely reserved for overseers and their favored crews. You remind yourself that any longing for luxuries beyond your ration is a dangerous distraction. Between bites, Amhotep tells you a quirky tidbit he picked up from a veteran. Some workers hid tiny, crudely carved figurines of their favorite gods inside the loaf molds before baking, hoping to carry divine protection into the field. Whether these amulets ever swayed the god's favor is anyone's guess. Scholars still debate the prevalence of personal religious tokens among laborers, but you find the idea odd and oddly reassuring, even if it's mere superstition. The thought of a tiny statue of Bes or Hathor nestled in your belly cracks the grim routine just enough to spark a wry smile. You chew slowly, mindful of the blistering sun overhead. Shade is thin here, and the canopy offers only fragmented relief. Dust drifts in through gaps, coating your bread in a fine powder that tastes like crushed limestone. Yet every swallow fuels your battered body, each morsel a small victory against hunger's gnawing claws. After finishing your bread, you peel the onion's remaining layers and nibble until your stomach's knot loosens. Crisp onion juice drips down your chin, stinging as it combines with sweat and sand. You duck your head to hide any tears, whether from pain or exhaustion. It's better to appear steady, Hunger is a universal pain, but tears risk marking you as weak, a likely target for an overseer's ire. You sip the last of the beer, crushing the cup in your palm so you'll have space in your sack for any small items worth carrying. Maybe that date cake you stashed in your loincloth earlier. Now a precious treasure. The hollow clank of broken pottery echoes around you, a brief percussion in the midday hush. Lunch rations here are strictly regulated, but word circulates that teams who meet their quotas early receive bonus servings, an incentive dripping with irony. Quality or quantity, the reward is always more bread and beer, never shade or rest. You recall that rumor and glance at Amotep, who shrugs. Worth a shot, he mutters, wiping crumbs from his forearm. You tuck away that thought, perhaps if you can conjure a bit of that brutal camaraderie. Your crew might scrape together enough speed or luck to snag an extra ration beneath the canopy. Conversation is limited to quiet admissions of pain and whispered strategies. Some talk of using soaked linen strips tied to heads to stave off heat stroke. Others joke about the absurdity of their situation, hauling stones to build a pharaoh's tomb, only to end up interred in little more than sand and sweat. You can't help but laugh softly at that one, though the humor tastes bitter. That shared amusement is a lifeline, a reminder that even here, in the oppressive heat and endless labor, humanity endures in small, defiant moments. As the final drops of beer vanish, you rise, legs wobbling beneath you. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, smearing onion juice and dust in a line from chin to cheek. You feel the familiar ache in your shoulders beckoning, the rope calling your name like a cruel lover, taking Amhotep's arm. You exchange a silent nod of solidarity. It's time to return to the ropes, to face the next brutal shift. You pocket the clay shard from your broken cup, a sentimental gesture, if only to remember that you once paused for nourishment. Even this trivial memento feels like a talisman against despair. With one last breath of the scant shade's cooler air, you step back into the sunlight, heart steeling itself for the labor ahead. The midday reprieve is nearly over, and each passing moment edges you closer to exhaustion's edge. As you move away, you glance at the empty canopy, the scattered loaves, and the onion's papery husks littering the ground. Lunch is gone in minutes. Anguish lasts hours. You grip your rope once more, feeling hunger's echo as fresh energy for the next stage, keeping those massive stones in motion for as long as your body will allow. You trudge back into position, each step a victory against the tremor in your legs. A new block waits, perched on its sledge like a sleeping giant that's about to awaken and crush you. Before you can contemplate the horror of that possibility, a rhythmic call rings out, 1, 2, 3, heave. It's the battle cry of your crew, the only language that matters here. In this moment, you and a dozen others fuse into a single, pulsing organism, bound by hemp ropes and mutual terror. Your forearms burn as you grip the rope, knuckles sinking into frayed fibers. Around you, seasoned laborers bark instructions over the groan of the stones rumble. Straight, someone yells. Left foot back, another shouts. This is teamwork in its rawest form, improvised, urgent, and utterly essential. Without this choreography, the sled would veer off course, the rollers would jam, and the massive slab could tip, crushing anyone unfortunate enough to be in its path. Historians still argue whether ancient crews used precise choreographies or relied on instinctual coordination. But here, in the dust and heat, every measured movement saves lives. You lean back with all your weight, legs braced as anchors in shifting sands. The block grinds forward, creaking like a wounded beast. Two men at the front guide wooden poles beneath the sledge, gently lifting and nudging it along the rollers. A veteran worker named Maku, his voice rough as sandpaper, calls out, "Brace the sledge, now!" You respond instantly, shifting your stance, ankles protesting, muscles coiling like springs. As the slab inches ahead, you feel the sinew of your shoulders burn, each fiber screaming for mercy. Somewhere to your right, A new recruit stumbles, rope slipping from his sweaty palms. Instantly, two teammates lunge to steady him, steadying the line. Without hesitation, you drop your pelvis, straighten your spine, and donate strength to his pull. One misstep here would trigger a domino effect. The slab could lurch, logs snap, and panicked workers would scatter like startled ibises. A sudden wind kicks up, tossing grit into your eyes. You blink through the tears, tasting dust on your tongue. The scent of trampled reeds from the shade canopy drifts past, an odd reminder of rest that feels impossibly distant. A light joke drifts from one corner of the line. Keep it steady, or we'll be Pharaoh's new floor tiles. Someone laughs, a harsh, raspy bark that breaks tension for a heartbeat. The humor tastes bitter but alive. A spark of humanity in this relentless forge. At the front, Maku signals the men with poles to shift their positions. These long wooden wedges, more bark than wood now, slip beneath the sledge's runners, creating tiny gaps for the rollers to slide in. It's an ingenious method, simple physics ingrained in every builder's muscle memory. Modern engineers still study this technique to understand friction management in antiquity, but for you, mastering it means less risk of being flattened. So you focus every ounce of concentration on synchronizing your strain with the others. You feel a surge of pride as the block clears the clustered rollers and glides onto a fresh set. The line exhales collectively, an exultant gasp in the midst of hardship. Yet the reprieve is fleeting. The overseer's sharp whistle snaps you back to urgency. He strides along the ramp's edge, whip coiled in his hand, eyes scanning for laggards. You straighten, grit your teeth, and lean into the rope again. Faster, he roars, voice echoing against the limestone walls. I want glory by sundown, not excuses. Your heartbeat quickens, adrenaline surging through exhausted muscles. Sweat soaks your tunic, turning it into a second skin that sticks and pulls at every movement. The scent of sweat mingles with animal fat from the rollers, creating an aroma so pungent it almost rivals the stench of your stale beer. You suppress a cringe and refocus. Disgust is a distraction you can't afford. Halfway up the ramp, you face the most perilous stretch, a kink where the angle shifts sharply. Here, roller alignment is critical. One misaligned log, and the sledge could skid sideways into the steep drop. You notice a roller wobbling, its axle jammed with sand. A jolt runs through the slab. Maku yells, "Clear it!" and two younger laborers scramble beneath the sledge, hands punching at the sand. You lock eyes with the overseer for a split second. His lip curls in approval at the crew's swift response. That small nod, that silent approval, feels more precious than any ration. With the obstruction removed, the block moves again, this time surging past the kink with a stubborn momentum you can almost ride. Grunts and wheezing breaths accompany the progress. Your arms feel like they've turned to stone, yet the camaraderie around you lends strength. You're not alone. Each man's labor is your labor. You're bound together by necessity and by an unspoken vow to finish this pull or perish trying. Suddenly, the overseer's whistle double blares, an alarm. You grind to a halt mid-twitch, muscles seizing as you struggle to keep the sled steady. A smaller crew above signals down frantically. Another block slipped its moorings and careened off the upper ramp. Crashing below, the sound of crushing wood and stone echoes like thunder. You hold your breath, fear coiling your guts. If that calamity had occurred here, you and your crew would have faced instant disaster. Instead, you remind yourself. Your teamwork averted catastrophe by resting the block before the kink. Your chest heaves as you swallow hard, eyes flicking between your comrades and the fallout zone. Bodies scramble at the crash site, some racing to assist the fallen, others stepping aside to avoid debris. You taste bile on your tongue at the close call. This is pyramid building in its most brutal reality. Every success is fragile, every moment a gamble with fate. But if you can channel this fear into focused teamwork, you'll live to pull another block. The overseer's next command cuts through the haze. Finish it! A low roar goes up as your crew tenses once more. You lean back, muscles coiling as one. The sledge surges forward, propelled by collective willpower and the ancient, inexplicable force that drove humans to build wonders from sheer rock. You grunt, louder this time, matching the cadence of your companions. Pull, heave, pull, heave. The slab clears the final stretch of rollers, gliding into a shallow recess carved into the pyramid's face. As you feel the uneven block settle, a cheer erupts, hoarse, breathless, triumphant. You stumble sideways, collapsing to one knee, chest heaving, sweat pouring in rivulets down your back. An overseer approaches, nodding once, terser praise, then a nod seldom felt so significant. You exchange fleeting glances with Maku, who offers a thin, exhausted smile. In that moment, the agony of the past hour crystallizes into a jagged victory. Together, you moved a mountain, yet there's no time for celebration. The overseer's gaze shifts upward, then back to you, as if measuring how long this victory can distract you before he demands more. You rise slowly, legs shaky, and dust yourself off. Your tunic is stained dark with sweat, your palms are raw. Rope burns deepening with each pull. You notice a tiny scrap of hieroglyphic graffiti etched into the block's side, a hidden joke left by a previous crew. A small, crudely drawn cartouche that reads, "Pharaoh's Dogs." You crack a weary smile, imagining the defiance behind that carve. Historians still debate how prevalent such graffiti was, but here, in this moment, it feels like a secret handshake across millennia. You tuck that irreverent inscription into your mind as you reposition yourself for the next block. The camaraderie forged in this deadly choreography hums in your veins, a lifeline against the overseer's cruelty and the sun's unrelenting blaze. You inhale deeply, tasting dust, sweat, and the faint hint of something fresh. Hope, if you dare call it that. With a final nod to Maku and a silent pledge to your crew, you grip the rope once more. Onward, someone mutters, and you obey. Together, you shift again into the brutal rhythm. Inhale, pull, grunt, exhale, each movement a testament to human collaboration under the most extreme conditions. And with every synchronized heave, you edge closer to surviving another hour in the desert hellscape of Pyramid Giza. You trudge back into position, muscles still trembling from the morning's brutal labors, and face the next trial, the mysteries of pyramid geometry. Modern engineers marvel at the precision of Khufu's monument, its sides aligned to true north within 1/15 of a degree, but here, under an unrelenting sun and armed only with ropes and rudimentary tools, that precision feels like sorcery. You tighten your grip on the coarse hemp rope, knuckles whitening, and steel yourself for a lesson in angles that could determine whether you remain in one piece or become part of the tomb's hidden foundation. The ramp before you has been transformed, its packed earth surface now scored with shallow trenches carved into the limestone bedrock. These guide rails direct each sledge, ensuring multi-ton blocks slide into place without deviating. You step into the trench, feet sinking slightly into the dusty channel, and feel the rough-cut edges grate against your sandals. Every grain of limestone dust clings to your sweaty skin as you position the block's wooden runners into the groove. A veteran laborer mutters, "If you stray from this trench, you'll be Pharaoh's new floor tile," prompting a hollow chuckle that ricochets off nearby stones. In a place where humor is a frail shield, even that thin joke offers a brief oasis of solidarity. With a sharp whistle, the overseer signals your crew to lean back in unison, and you heave with all your dwindling strength. The slab groans as it shifts, its weight pressing into every joint in your body. Inch by excruciating inch, the sledge obeys the trench's guidance, sparing you the terror of veering off course. As you pull, you recall a quirky tidbit. Fringe reports claim that certain blocks were fitted with tiny bronze bearings, an advanced mechanism unconfirmed by mainstream archaeology. Whether those bearings ever existed remains dubious. Scholars still debate whether they were used at Giza, but the rumor makes you grin through the pain. Imagining ancient Egyptians inventing the world's first ball bearings to ease your misery. Once the block settles in its trench, you switch tasks, chiseling the edges for a seamless fit. A laborer hands you a battered copper chisel and a wooden mallet. You plant the chisel's tip against the limestone's edge and bring the mallet down. The shock reverberates up your arm, and fine white dust sprays into the air, coating your face in a ghostly mask. You groan as you tap, shaving off tiny slivers, each one a hair's breadth closer to perfection. A jeering thought flirts at the edge of your mind. If only high school geometry teachers had promised ASMR-worthy chiseling. You suppress the laugh as dust cakes your throat, leaving you coughing in gritty bursts. Next is leveling. A shallow water trench, barely 6 inches wide, runs parallel to the guide rails. A colleague dips a wooden sighting rod into the murky liquid, lifting it just enough so a droplet clings to its tip. He holds it aloft, squinting against the sun, eyes narrowed in concentration. If the droplet rolls smoothly along the rod, the surface is level. Historians still debate whether this water-based leveling was widespread or limited to elite crews, but for you, that murky water represents both salvation and peril. You watch the droplet glisten like a tiny silver pearl before it arcs into the trench with a satisfying plop. The overseer nods once, approving your work without a word, despite the triumph. Thirst lances your throat, a reminder that every drop of water here doubles as a cooling agent and a precious resource. You glance briefly at your clay water skin hanging at your hip, still half full, but know you'll need that for later. For now, your focus snaps to the next geometric puzzle, aligning to true north. A pair of tall poles, firmly planted in the sand, stand like sentinels marking the meridian line. A taut string stretches between them, forming an invisible spine for the pyramid's massive framework. You approach with the block, eyes fixed on the string. A laborer supplies a plumb bob, a simple rock on a length of cord, and holds it beneath the string. When the bob's weight pulls the cord taut, the string hangs perfectly vertical, confirming its alignment. Some experts assert the Egyptians used circumpolar stars, observations of Kochab and Mizar, to refine this alignment, while others argue for solar shadow techniques. Historians still debate which method proved truer, but your job is to trust their celestial handiwork and align the block's face to the string. You press the block's edge flush against the guide string, feeling its coarse fibers rub against your palm. A surge of pride pulses through you despite the agony. You're participating in the same astronomical feats that mapped civilizations. A light joke escapes your lips. They say NASA envied Egyptian surveyors. No satellites required. The joke is met with a few ragged laughs, quickly stifled by the overseer's watchful glare. In Giza's desert amphitheater, laughter is a brief spark before reality's inevitable dark. With the block squared north-south, the overseer steps forward, brandishing his staff like a scepter. He taps the stone's face rhythmically, once, twice, thrice, each tap echoing across the plateau, 3 taps per side, the unspoken code of quality control. If the taps fall unevenly, you'll be ordered to chisel and realign until perfection is achieved. Today, his taps ring true, and he motions you onward with a curt nod. Your crew shifts position, now tasked with moving the block laterally into its final resting place. Long wooden levers slide beneath the sledge's runners, their ends rough against your palms. You push in tight formation, breath ragged, as the slab glides along the trench walls. The motion is smooth, almost hypnotic, a deadly dance of wood on stone. Your feet slip occasionally on stray sand, reminding you that missteps here can mean crushing disaster. A veteran beside you quips, "If only we had anti-lock brakes," drawing a grim chortle from your throat as your sandals scrape against the trench walls. Finally, the block settles with a muffled crack, stone locking into stone with satisfying precision. Dust spirals up in a miniature cyclone, sparkling momentarily in the sunlight. You lean back, chest heaving, shoulders trembling from the task's demands. For a heartbeat, you allow yourself to savor the achievement. Perfect geometry carved by human hands, a testament to endurance and ingenuity. But celebration is fleeting. The overseer's sharp whistle cuts through the air, a signal that geometry class is over and hauling duty resumes. You exchange a conspiratorial grin with Maku, the veteran whose quiet guidance has steered you through each ordeal. He nods, brow furrowed, as if to say, one more triumph before sundown. You muster a tired thumbs up, though every bone aches in protest as you stagger back into line, rope in hand. You glance up at the pyramid's gleaming silhouette. Its layered steps extend into the shimmering heat haze, each tier a monument to sweat, sand, and extraordinary precision. You recall the quirky rumor about bronze bearings and the lively debates among scholars, a reminder that, even millennia later, these stones still guard their secrets. You position yourself at the rope, knuckles raw from frayed fibers, and take a deep breath. The next slab awaits, guided by water, string, and sheer human will. You lean into the pull, muscles coiling, as the pyramid's geometry carries you forward, each inch a triumph of ancient science and your own battered determination. And though modern engineers suburbanize their precision with lasers and GPS, here, past and present collide in every heave of the rope, every tap of the staff, every drop of leveling water. With a final grunt, you pull once more, forging your story into the stones that will outlast your fleeting breath. You've survived the geometry gauntlet, but now the midday sun strikes with renewed ferocity, and the real chaos begins. Midday misadventures, where ramps betray you and sledges go rogue. As you step into position beside the next hulking limestone block, the air shimmers, distorting vision and stinging sweat from your eyes. Your skin feels slick, as if coated in a thin film of molten metal. But there's no going back. The overseer's whistle splits the air, and you grab the coarse hemp rope tighter, bracing for the unknown. At first, the pull begins smoothly. You and your crew lean back in unison. Inhale, pull, grunt, your combined strength shifting the stone forward. The wooden rollers creak, churn, and then glide effortlessly through the sandy trench, which was carved precariously that morning. The ramp ahead, however, tells a different story. Light rain last week left hidden pockets of soft sand beneath the packed surface. Historians still debate how often Egyptians watered ramps to reduce friction. Some claim frequent wetting. Others insist it was rare, yet today that wet evidence is buried under fine dunes. Waiting, halfway up, the sledge jolts violently. You stumble, heart in your throat, as the first roller sinks into a hidden pit, tossing the block off balance with a sickening lurch. Time slows. The stone tilts, its weight dragging two workers off their feet and sending them sprawling into the sand. For a heart-stopping moment, you fear the entire slab will topple, crushing you and half your crew under its dead weight. You yank at the rope with desperate strength, muscles screaming, and manage to halt its slide by dropping to your knees and anchoring yourself against the sand. Around you, shouts ring out, some panicked, others controlled, as veteran laborers scramble to shore up the sand pit with spare packing stones. These oases of soft sand, nature's ambush, are notorious in pyramid lore. One recorded collapse in a nearby ramp tunnel buried an entire crew, though thankfully excavation records indicate all were rescued, albeit with broken limbs, casualty or miracle. Depending on perspective, that incident shows no worksite was entirely under human control. You swallow hard, taste grit and adrenaline, and glance up at the overseer, whose whip remains coiled, but whose eyes burn with contempt for delays. A veteran named Ka watches you, then calls out, "Send runners back to refill the sandbags." A dozen laborers sprint barefoot across the plateau, kicking up clouds of dust, bound for the stockpile where coarse sand waits in burlap sacks. The overseer stomps forward, inspecting the pit like a judge assessing a crime scene. You swallow, muscles quivering, as he flicks his staff at the collapsing section, sending a plume of dust into the air. "Fix it quickly," he orders, voice low but lethal. Pharaoh demands progress. While crews shore up the pit, you seize a moment to steady your breathing. You recall an odd fringe tale that builders sometimes used animal oils, cow tallow, or even donkey fat to compact the ramp surface and repel shifting grains. Mainstream archaeology rejects widespread use of fats here, calling the evidence circumstantial. But in this heat and chaos, you wouldn't scoff at an extra layer of greasy stability, if only such ingenuity were standard instead of whispered rumor. Within minutes, the sandbags arrive. Fellow workers dump the coarse sand into the pit, packing it down with wooden mallets until the surface resembles the firmer ramp again. You wipe sweat from your brow, feeling the sting of sand in every pore. The overseer nods curtly, signaling the green light. You and your crew brace once more, shifting your positions to avoid the pit's edge. A watershed moment. You lean into the pull, muscles coiling like springs, and the slab obeys, inching upward. No sooner is the immediate crisis averted than a different hazard emerges. The ramp's support timbers, long beams wedged beneath the earth, begin to groan under the stone's immense weight. You tremble as wood creaks and snaps, and the ramp shudders. Just last week, a support failure caused a 30-foot section of ramp to collapse, trapping 2 crews and causing dozens of injuries. Worksite records, transcribed onto papyrus fragments, mention a frantic rescue that ended with bitter wine rations as consolation for overnight entombment. You've drunk that wine. It tastes sour and leaves a numb burn at the back of your throat. Suddenly, the slab's path is blocked by shifting timbers. You and 2 fellow laborers drop to your hands and knees, digging frantically at exposed beams, trying to wedge small stones beneath them for reinforcement. It's a race against weight and gravity, a precarious dance of hands and heartbeats. As you jack up the support just enough for the sledge to roll over, you feel every splintered fiber of the beam scrape against your palms and taste dust and wood resin in your mouth. Movement resumes. You scramble upright, gripping the rope again as the slab rolls forward, the ramp groaning in protest. By now, your crew's rhythm is fragmented, grunts and heaves punctuated by frantic hammering and curses. Yet, amid the chaos, you discover a savage unity. A younger worker scrapes sand from your rope calluses with a grooved shell, easing fresh friction. Another offers a swig of water from his leather skin, a brief balm to parched throats. Welcome gestures, small miracles amidst ruin. Historians argue how often crews self-organized such mutual aid, but here, you witness it firsthand. Human solidarity born of shared terror. Finally, the slab reaches a narrow ledge at the pyramid's midpoint, a resting zone where blocks accumulate before final placement. You and a handful of exhausted laborers slide the heavy load onto the ledge's side, bracing it with wooden chocks. Your back arches in relief as you collapse beside the stone, chest heaving, legs trembling like wounded birds. The overseer stares down from above, whip coiled but unused, a silent acknowledgement that you survived this calamity. He nods once, almost imperceptibly, then turns his attention to another crew in distress. You close your eyes for a moment, tasting dust and sweat, and reflect on the day's near disasters, hidden sand pits, failing timbers, toppled blocks. Each catastrophe narrowly averted, but no guarantee it won't happen again. The midday sun arcs toward its zenith, promising more hazards, heat stroke, dehydration, equipment failure, yet, for now, you allow yourself a scant moment's pride. You helped keep the pyramid's heart beating, warding off disaster with grit, wood, and sheer determination. Even as you rest, you notice chilling signs. Heat haze rippling across the ramp's surface, fracturing light into wavering patterns, and the distant wail of an injured worker's groan. The plateau hums with tension, as if the stones themselves are alive. Hungry for tragedy, you swallow hard, rise unsteadily, and clutch the rope once more. There's no luxury in hesitation. The overseer's whistle demands you resume. With muscles still trembling, you lean into the pull again, each inch a testament to endurance, each breath a victory over chaos. Tonight, when you finally collapse under the stars, these midday misadventures will burn vivid in your memory. But for now, between sweat and sand, you keep moving, one brutal heave at a time, undaunted, unwilling to let the ramp, the rope, or fate itself claim you before sundown. You blink against the brutal glare of the sun as you trudge back into formation, sweat stinging your eyes like a swarm of tiny embers. Your skin already feels as if it's been seared by the day's relentless heat, cracked, raw, and craving relief. But there is no respite in this desert smithy, only rumors of miraculous ancient remedies, the secrets of Egyptian sunscreen. Today, you'll discover whether crocodile dung and other peculiar concoctions offer any real salvation or merely deepen the misery. Your crew halts beside a low stone platform shaded by a ragged reed canopy. Here, veteran laborers set aside their ropes and stones to apply their makeshift sun shields. You eye the murky bowls awaiting you, each filled with thick, unappetizing pastes. The overseer's whistle shrieks, and you slump toward one of the bowls, apprehension twisting in your gut. You dip a finger in first to test the texture, gritty, tacky, and leaving your skin feeling like you've smeared the desert's own dust upon yourself. The primary ingredient is, without a doubt, crocodile dung, a fact that still makes your stomach flip. Fringe reports celebrate its supposed UV-blocking properties, a curious practice scholars still debate due to scant archaeological evidence. Some suggest that dung's ammonia content created a rudimentary sunscreen, while others argue the pungent paste was more symbolic than functional. As you shovel a dollop onto your forearm, the odor hits your nostrils, a rancid blend of decay, algae, and something faintly metallic. You hesitate, picturing crocodile middens along the Nile, then slap the paste onto your face. Honest to the gods, it feels as if you've drawn a scab of pure stink across your cheeks. Instantly, the paste's coolness is replaced by a cloying weight. Tiny grains of sand cling to the sludge, embedding into every pore. You scrub at your palm to remove a stray globule from your eyebrow, inadvertently smearing the paste into your hairline. Now, even your scalp feels coated in desert tar. The effect is less sunblock and more oven liner, an uncomfortable barrier that only heightens your awareness of the sun's pitiless rays. Despite the discomfort, you must admit something. After slathering on this grotesque cream, the sun's sting dulls ever so slightly. Your arms, which moments ago felt as if they were blistering in real time, now ache more than burn. That may count as a victory, if you ignore the lingering smell. Historians still argue whether this dung-based sunscreen was widespread or confined to specialized teams. But your brief relief suggests at least some practical benefit amid the horror. Beyond crocodile dung, other concoctions stand ready for desperate application. A bowl of castor oil mixed with ochre pigment offers a second option. You dip another finger in. The oil is viscous, heavier than the dung paste, but far more tolerable scent-wise, earthy and slightly nutty. You massage it into your neck and shoulders as an alternative trial. The ochre pigment stains your skin a dull reddish hue that makes you look like a roasting carcass, but the oil's slickness creates a subtle sheen that seems to reflect some of the sun's heat. Fringe archaeological reports claim that colored oils also held symbolic meaning, marking laborers as belonging to particular crews, an identity badge more than a beauty ritual. Scholars still debate how much of those practices stemmed from superstition versus survival. But here, any stash of pigment is a potential shield. You dare a glance around at your comrades. Some have gone all in on crocodile dung, faces gleaming greenish black, like swamp monsters risen to toil for Pharaoh. Others, perhaps wiser or simply vain, stick to the ochre oil, their reddened arms gleaming in the sun as they preen briefly before returning to the grind. A handful combine both, layering dung over oil or vice versa, an experimental hybrid approach that you suspect offers neither full protection nor olfactory decency. At least the dung dries a little, forming cracked platelets that flake off in the slightest breeze, leaving behind a faint trace of ammonia and mystery. You brush off a loose flake that's fallen onto your tunic and steel yourself for the next task, hauling another block. The overseer's whistle sounds, and you clamber to your feet, shoulders heavy with paste but spirits marginally buoyed by the novelty. As you grip the rope, you feel the crusted sunscreen chafe against your palms, adding another layer of friction to the rope burn, an unexpected downside. You shift your grip, trying to keep the greasy residue from making the hemp too slippery, and lean back together with the crew. The block groans forward, and you realize that the dung and oil aren't the only sun remedies in your arsenal. Plasticine-like clay, applied as a thin mask on the cheeks and nose, promises cooling relief when damp. You reach up mid-pull, pressing a handful of clay against your forehead. The coolness offers a fleeting reprieve, making your brow feel as though it's bathed in cool spring water instead of desert sweat. But keeping clay moist is nearly impossible under this furnace sky. By the time you peel your hand away, the clay has already turned dusty and warm. A few laborers sip from skins of chilled beer before reapplying their sunscreen, using the remaining liquid to thin the pastes and create smoother blends. The beer's yeasty tang lingers in their odors, but at least it adds hydration to the mix. You consider whether to join their technique. After all, mixing your sunscreen with beer could offer dual benefits. But with only a scant ration left, you hesitate to squander precious hydration on your stinking face armor. Your focus returns to the slab moving under the absurdly slick paste on your shoulders. The dung's ammonia smell, now mingled with beer and clay dust, creates a bouquet that might repel flies or attract scorpions. Nobody's quite sure. Yet you feel a tiny bubble of amusement. Buzzing flies slapping into your greased arms and sliding off offers nearly as much entertainment as fear. A fellow laborer next to you mutters, "Feel like a rotisserie chicken," and you snort through your nose, nearly choking on dust by the time the slab rests midway up the ramp. Your sunscreen trial has taught you a few lessons. First, crocodile dung truly numbs the pain of sunburn, though at the cost of endless itch and embarrassment. Second, castor oil and ochre provide a smoother, if less effective, shield against UV rays. Third, clay masks offer brief cooling but demand constant rehydration. And finally, combining hydration from beer with sunscreen pastes is an ingenious, if liquidity depleting, hack. These improvised methods, wrenched from necessity, underscore the worker's resourcefulness, proof that when you're staring down a mortal sun, you'll try anything to stave off collapse. The overseer's next whistle blasts you from your reverie. You wipe the worst of the paste from your hands on your tunic, though traces remain lodged under your fingernails, and brace for the next hauls, skin feeling as if it's encased in greasy armor. Each inch you pull the slab forward is a testament to your battered will. You're not just fighting gravity and the overseer's whip, but the sun itself. That relentless star, once your master, now conflicts with your improvised defenses, sparking a silent battle of endurance. You lean into the rope, muscles coiling, paste flaking, and pull again, determined that this day, unlike so many before, your skin won't betray you completely, despite the lingering stench and uncomfortable crust over your scars. You can't deny the tiny victory. You've armed yourself with the eccentric wisdom of ancient sunscreens, surviving each blazing hour by turning dung and oil into lifelines. The final test? Making it through the next brutal hours without roasting alive, or becoming Pharaoh's newest sacrifice to the desert's ever-watchful sun. You stagger away from the cloying clutches of sun protection pastes, shoulders still slick with residue, and trudge toward your sleeping quarters, those deceptively cozy mud huts that house you at night. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows over the maze of dwellings constructed from the very earth you're enslaved to move. Each mud hut rises shoulder high from the sandy floor, its walls splotched with ancient reed mat patches. You push open the low doorway, ducking beneath the rough-hewn lintel, and find yourself in a cramped chamber illuminated only by slivers of dying daylight filtering through cracks. Inside, the air is stale, tinged faintly with fermented grain, the aroma of yesterday's beer still clinging to the earthen floor. You deposit your tools and winding ropes in a corner, taking care not to disturb the faint carvings in the mud, the graffiti of past laborers scratching their names or drawing crude frogs to ward off evil. Historians still debate whether such graffiti served as mere boredom busters or secret plea messages to the gods. But here, they're your only testament to shared humanity, a reminder that countless others endured this very claustrophobic gloom. Your hut houses 10 men, seasonal laborers who've returned after every Nile harvest in hopes of exemption from village taxes. You recognize Amhotep, yawning and stretching like a scrawny cat, Ka, nursing a swollen ankle from that morning's collapse, and 2 new recruits whose eyes widen at each dark corner. The mud walls are thick enough to insulate against desert chills, though they also trap the day's heat, creating a simmering sauna by sunset. Reed mats lie stacked neatly in a corner, your only bedding, coarse but surprisingly insulating when woven into layered pallets. You hesitate, momentarily overwhelmed by the oppressive stillness. Then select your mat and unroll it near the back wall. The floor's surface is pitted with tiny depressions, ancient roots and dried worm burrows, leaving your back to conform to the earth's natural irregularities. You don't bother smoothing it. Comfort is an alien concept now. Instead, you wipe sweat and sand from your face on your tunic's edge, sending dust motes swirling in the fading light. Night bees begin their low hum outside, aggressive insects drawn to the reed hut's residual grain scraps. Every few minutes, you hear a sharp thud as one digs in and crashes against the mud walls, only to fall silent, despite the threat of stings. You appreciate the insect's inadvertent company. The hut's silence is stifling, and even the hum of a bee feels like a lifeline against the void. Your hut's sole ventilation, 2 narrow slits carved high in the walls, offers scant relief. You strain to peer through one slit at the vast desert beyond. The sky is shifting into deep indigo, and a single star, likely Sirius, winks into existence. Ancient Egyptian builders used Sirius's heliacal rising to time the inundation of the Nile, a fact still argued among scholars who debate the calendar's earliest accuracy. You marvel at the irony. You owe your presence here to that same flood cycle. Yet tonight you'll sleep on mud floors. Brothers in arms under an indifferent sky, a fellow laborer, Nebu, lights a small oil lamp suspended from a nail in the wall. The wick, dipped in sesame oil, sputters to life, casting a flickering glow across the hut's interior. Shadows leap and dance, transforming reed mats into ghostly tapestries. The heat from the flame mingles with the trapped warmth of the hut, creating a humid blanket that clings to your skin. Mosquitoes begin to buzz, their bites a nightly ritual that could transmit malaria, an ever-present hazard scholars note was rampant among workers, shortening lifespans long before senility claimed pharaohs. You sit cross-legged beside your mat, cradling the remainder of your date cake. The sweet morsel feels like royalty compared to the staple barley bread of midday. You break it in half, handing a piece to Maku, who nods in solemn gratitude. As you chew, you listen to your hutmates share whispered stories. One claims to have once found a tiny lotus bud hidden in mud mortar, an ornamental flourish by masons, they say, though mainstream archaeologists dismiss such tales as fanciful. These idle riddles, whether true or not, spark fleeting wonder and a welcome break from the day's brutality. Nebu speaks next, voice hushed. I heard trustworthy rumors that some huts near the quarry had small stone benches built inside, luxury for master craftsmen alone. He scoffs softly, and the hut erupts in quiet laughter. Indeed, Fringe archaeology mentions specialized dwellings for skilled artisans, yet scholars still debate whether such divisions truly existed or if they're later romantic inventions. You smile at the thought of benches in a desert prison, an absurd contrast that lightens your mood. As the lamp gutter flickers, the hut's confinement settles around you. You shift onto your side, trying to find a position that eases the ache in your back and shoulders. Ka redistributes a reed mat to cover a particularly uncomfortable dip in the floor, his small act of kindness reaffirming the solidarity that keeps you alive. Outside, you hear muffled chants as a small group prays to Khnum, the ram-headed god believed to fashion humans on his potter's wheel. You wonder whether these rituals offered real comfort or were just another layer of ritual labor. Scholars still debate the extent of organized worship among workers here. Your eyelids grow heavy, the lamp's light softening into pale gold beneath your lids. You catch Nebu's quiet recitation of an old desert song, lyrics faded with time, echoing like a lullaby. Someone murmurs the result of today's tally: 10 blocks placed, 4 near misses, and 1 minor injury. Shepherding numbers in this place feels macabre, yet it's the only measure of progress you know. A breeze stirs, slipping through the narrow slits, carrying with it the cool promise of night air. You stretch your hand toward the opening, letting the desert breeze brush across your palm, the contrast between the suffocating hut and the infinite. Cool expanse beyond strikes you as cruelly poetic. Tonight, you sleep on hard earth, as countless laborers have before, your body a testament to their sacrifice. You whisper a final plea to the gods, for the hut to hold through the night, for your limbs to endure another sunrise, for the overseer's favor to remain just distant enough to spare your life. Whether tablets record these hopes or no, your prayer feels meaningful here, amid the damp heat and creeping darkness. As your eyes close fully, the lamp sputters once more, then settles into a steady glow. You drift toward a fitful sleep, your body aching, mind heavy with the day's horrors and small triumphs. In your last waking moment, you recall the mud walls scratched with graffiti, the closeness of your comrades, the rough comfort of shared hardship. Under the indifferent stars, you find a measure of peace in this cramped sanctuary, fragile yet real, a fleeting refuge in the relentless furnace of Pyramid Giza. You wake before dawn, body stiff from yesterday's torments, and step into the chill of pre-dawn air. Today's ordeal is no pyramid block, it's the health hazards of the trade. Hidden enemies lurk in every drop of Nile water and grain of desert sand. Draw a breath if you can. You're about to tour your own worst nightmares. Your first warning comes at the water trough. You take a sip, and the bitter taste hits your tongue like a promise of doom. Historians agree that schistosomiasis bilharzia infested Nile water, parasites burrowing through unprotected skin, lodging in organs, causing chronic disease and early death. Scholars still debate how widespread it was among Giza workers, but every dip is a gamble with your life. You swallow quickly, knowing thirst will outpace fear, and shrug off the chill of the morning. Rounding the corner, you stumble over the limp form of a laborer named Neferti. Yesterday's ramp collapse crushed his foot. Now he hobbles, favoring one side. You know broken bones were common. Archaeologists uncovered skeletons with healed fractures and bone diseases, proof that many carried injuries home, if they lived long enough. Mainstream studies confirm that limited medical care meant simple sprains could fester into gangrene. You glance at his swollen ankle and adjust your own boots, grateful for intact limbs. Nearby, the overseer's whistle blows. You trudge into position, each step a protest from your sore calves. A sudden sting on your calf reveals a sand flea bite, tiny insects abundant here that burrow into skin. While they don't carry plague as in distant lands, modern entomologists warn any scratch can seed infection. You clench your teeth, resisting the urge to scratch, which would welcome bacteria and deepen the wound. Another laborer, Meru, grips his chest as you haul the rope. His face pales. You catch his panicked gasp. He's probably overexerting under heat stress. Ancient Egyptians lacked knowledge of cardiovascular strain, so chest pain was either ignored or ended in collapse. Scholars still argue whether any worker suffered heart attacks here, but you've heard whispers of men who dropped mid-pull, never to rise again. You lean forward, redoubling your effort to keep the sledge moving, each heave a prayer against sudden death. Halfway up the ramp, a sharp crack echoes. It's not the overseer's whip, but a tendon tearing in your shoulder. You grit your teeth, shoulders screaming, as you grit through the strain. Without proper rest or bandages, you know a torn rotator cuff means lasting impairment. Yet there's no time to tend to injuries. The block must move. You adjust your grip, shifting strain to your legs, a desperate tactic that risks further damage but keeps you alive. As you slip the slab onto a midpoint ledge, you collapse beside it, heart pounding. You retrieve a scrap of stale bread from your pouch, plain barley loaf of questionable quality, and chew slowly. Grain sometimes held tiny amulets of clay, shaped as protective gods baked inside. Fringe historians still debate how common that practice was, but the thought of divine protection hidden in your food brings a small comfort. Whether superstition or strategy, it reminds you that ancient laborers crafted rituals as shields against unseen threats. A quick inspection of your palms reveals rope burns and small cuts crusted with sand. You remember the resin, frankincense, and myrrh, given sparingly by sympathetic overseers. Today, you break a small shard from your pouch. Warm it between your fingers until sticky, then press it onto your palm. Its antiseptic aroma cuts through the sweat, creating a crude varnish that seals the wound. Modern studies confirm these resins have antibacterial properties, though scholars still debate whether they were truly used for medical care or reserved for temple rituals. You give thanks, mindful that this token might spare you infection. Recovering, you stumble toward a trough to rinse the resin stickiness away. The grimy water feels like poison, but you dip a cloth and press it around your wrist. A gentle rubbing removes grit, even as you dread the parasites lingering within. You wonder if any shower of sand or swirl of dust carries invisible invaders, ready to turn today's tiny cut into tomorrow's fatal abscess. As the sun crests, heat stroke threatens. You press a damp linen cloth, soaked in that same polluted water, against your forehead. Historians confirm ancient workers used soaked rags for cooling, but the risk of reintroducing schistosoma remains. Yet you need the brief relief. Even if it costs a future ache, you feel the cloth's damp chill and pray your body holds out. Returning to your rope, you notice the overseer eyeing you with thin approval. You grip the hemp fibers, gritty under your resin seal, and lean into the pull. Each heave sears your wounds anew. Rope burns reopen, but you grit your teeth, honoring the resin's protection. Before the next block is in place, a shout rings out. One worker staggers, collapsing beside the ramp's edge. He's overcome by heat stroke. Teammates hastily lower him to the sand, fanning with reed mats. No physician arrives. They pour water mixed with beer into his mouth, a makeshift electrolyte brew. Studies of ancient papyri hint at similar remedies, though mainstream scholars question their practicality. You watch, heart pounding. Treatment in this place is improvisation born from desperation. Refocused, you advance again, muscles trembling. Sand clings to your sweat-slicked skin, dust filling your lungs. You tell yourself, each inch you move, this slab is a triumph over your body's fragility. Each drop of resin, each gulp of dirty water, each resisted scratch is a small victory against unrelenting hazards. Finally, the slab clicks into place. You stumble backward, shoulders shaking, and taste dust and sweat on your cracked lips. The overseer nods curtly, then commands, "Next block." There's no time for rest. Health here is a luxury stolen only by death. You gather your resolve, preparing to face tomorrow's unseen foes and today's. Again, the sun has begun its slow descent when you're yanked away from the sweaty camaraderie of rope pulling to stand before the pharaoh's watchful eye. It's mid-afternoon, and the immense silhouette of Khufu's pyramid looms over the plateau like an indifferent god. Here, The overseer's harsh methods give way to an even more terrifying presence, Pharaoh Khufu himself, or at least the knowledge that he might appear at any moment. You straighten your tattered tunic, wipe fresh sweat from your brow, and steel yourself to stand under the gaze of a monarch who expects nothing less than eternal perfection. You're led along a narrow causeway toward a raised dais of finely crushed limestone, the only part of the worksite smooth enough to suit royal footsteps. This platform, encircled by polished sandstone blocks, serves as Khufu's inspection point. Official records carved into temple walls confirm that Khufu inspected his pyramid annually, though historians still argue whether these visits were grand public spectacles or private tours conducted under heavy security. No matter which interpretation you favor, the dread is the same. If Pharaoh disapproves, lives could be forfeit as you step onto the dais. Knee-deep in ivory dust, you spot two gilded thrones, empty but monumental. Each is carved with the royal uraeus, a rearing cobra symbolizing divine authority. The air shimmers with heat and expectation. You and your fellow laborers stand in neat ranks a few paces away, granite blocks pushed carefully aside to make room. The overseers form a smaller circle closer to the thrones, their clean linen kilts stark against the laborers' sweat-darkened garb. Suddenly, a horn sounds. Low, sonorous, vibrating through the limestone. It isn't an overseer's whistle, but the pharaoh's royal signal. You stiffen, heart pounding, as armored guards emerge from a side chamber carved directly into the nearby cliff. Their bronze spears gleam, and their chariots, ornate war wagons repurposed for ceremonial use, stand ready. Around you, laborers avert their eyes, some dropping to knees, though no command is given. Even the specter of the pharaoh's arrival is enough to inspire ritual submission. Moments later, at a break in the sun's glare, Khufu strides onto the dais. He wears a lightweight white tunic and the royal name's headdress striped in gold and lapis lazuli in his right hand. He carries a crook and flail, the symbols of kingship and fertility. Although no common worker would ever dare stand this close under normal circumstances, today you're part of his pyramid's living foundation. He pauses at the throne, gazes out over the worksite, and you feel his eyes like twin suns scorching your soul. A hush falls. Without a word, Khufu lifts a finger, and one of the overseers steps forward to present the afternoon's tally. 300 blocks placed, 0 major collapses, 1 minor injury, a testament to efficiency and discipline. You see Khufu's nostrils flare slightly, an almost imperceptible exhalation conveying approval. You inhale, relief flooding your chest, but you force yourself to maintain rigid posture. Any misstep could turn that approval to wrath. Next, Khufu descends the dais slowly, inspecting the freshly placed stones. You watch as the royal sandals press into polished casing blocks made of fine white Tura limestone that will one day reflect the sun's rays so brilliantly the pyramid is said to shine like a jewel. Mainstream Egyptology confirms that the original casing comprised over 144,000 casing stones. Giving the monument a mirrored exterior, historians still argue how many casing stones survive today. Some estimate only a handful remain. But beneath your feet lies a pristine example, still gleaming under centuries-old preservation. Khufu glances down at the casing, taps it with the crook's tip, and listens to the hollow ping, a quality test for voids or cracks. The lack of ominous silence pleases him. You recall that in ancient texts, pharaohs were likened to Horus the falcon. Their keen senses were thought to perceive flaws no mortal eye could detect. Whether this divine metaphor translated into practical quarry inspections is debated among scholars, but the symbolism here is unmistakable. The pharaoh is both god and engineer, measuring perfection with arcane precision. As Khufu moves on, he pauses at a group of overseers documenting inscriptions on nearby blocks. These marks, symbols denoting work crews and shift times, are known from archaeological finds in hidden chambers. Fringe researchers claim some marks include mischievous doodles or coded messages, though mainstream scholarship contends these were purely administrative. Or either way, Khufu's interest in these hieroglyphics underscores the project's bureaucratic complexity. You wonder whether the pharaoh suspects any crew of sloppiness or secret dissent as he reads each symbol. Stepping back onto the dais, Khufu surveys the laborers once more. His gaze settles briefly on you, exposed to a moment of terror so electric it still crackles in your bones. He raises his hand in a gesture that might be blessing or judgment. You can't tell which. Nearby, an overseer bows, and the guards lower their spears in reverence. You swallow hard, mind racing through every rule you've memorized. Never speak to the pharaoh, never look directly into his eyes, never step out of line. Ancient lore says a curse would befall anyone who showed disrespect. Scholars still sift through tomb inscriptions for remnants of these rumored hexes. Then, as silently as he arrived, Khufu retires behind the curtain of his grand pavilion. The horn sounds once more, and the guards escort him away. The thrones, once towering symbols of omnipotence, stand empty again. You and your comrades exhale collectively, relief mingling with exhaustion. It's as if a storm passed, leaving the air charged but calm. One of the overseers approaches you, pressing a small clay seal into your hand, Khufu's personal cipher, marking you as among those who maintained flawless work under royal inspection. This seal is more than a token. It's a safeguard. Should you later falter, the overseers may recall Khufu's satisfaction or disappointment. Historians still debate the seal's administrative role, but here, you clutch it tightly, a literal lifeline. As you descend from the dais, you notice the workers clutching their own seals, comparing their impressions like medals. A mural craftsman in your crew quips, keeps the scorpions from biting, and you allow a dry smile. Beneath the weight of stone and sun, this small jest feels nearly as precious as the seal itself. Returning to the ramps, you press the clay cipher into your loincloth, mingling its smooth surface with sand dust. You grip the rope once more, body trembling from the adrenaline of the pharaoh's presence. The overseer's whistle shrieks, and with renewed determination, you lean back, willing every ounce of strength to move the block forward, even as exhaustion claws at your limbs. You carry with you the memory of Khufu's gaze, an eternal reminder that beyond sand and limestone, you build for a legacy that stretches beyond your own mortal coil. With each synchronized grunt and heave, you honor that watchful eye, striving to prove that you belong among the living foundations of eternity, and not the forgotten obstacles discarded in the pyramid's shadow. You're pulled away from the heaving ropes and the blinding sun into a shaded clearing, heart still pounding from the day's brutality. Here, amid linen-clad priests and polished stone altars, you'll undergo the spiritual safety checks, rituals meant to shield bodies as surely as ramps and ropes build the pyramid itself. Steady your breath. Faith now wields power as deadly as any whip. Priests in crisp white kilts stand in a semicircle around a low altar of black granite. Ostrich feather fans rest at their sides, stirring the scented air. Atop the altar lie libation bowls, alabaster jars of scented oils, and papyrus scrolls inscribed with ancient invocations. You've heard that these texts date to Egypt's earliest dynasties, though scholars still debate whether they represent genuine Old Kingdom practices or later priestly inventions. Either way, you know the words carry the weight of history and divine expectation. A lead priest, wearing a tall, feathered headdress, steps forward. He raises his arms and chants in a deep, echoing voice, "Osiris, judge of the dead, grant safe passage to these hands. Sekhmet, protector of the living, guard their step." His words roll across the courtyard, and you feel a shiver replace your exhaustion as he chants. Acolytes wave censers filled with frankincense and myrrh, The smoke curls in languid spirals, its sweet, resinous odor stinging your nostrils. Modern analyses confirm these resins possess mild antibacterial properties. Yet debate continues whether ancient Egyptians knew of their medicinal value or employed them purely for symbolism. Today, the scent bolsters your resolve even as it chokes you. Next, the priest dips a slender reed brush into a bowl of water mixed with ground lotus pollen, a fragrant, milky concoction said to soothe skin and spirit. He flicks droplets across your brow and cheeks. The cool trickle soothes sunburned skin, though you're unsure whether any true antiseptic properties exist or if this is purely ceremonial. Historians still clash over the practical versus symbolic uses of lotus in ancient rites. But you welcome every drop. Then comes the anointing with scented oil. You lean forward as a second priest rubs cedar and cypress oil into your temples. The sharp, woody fragrance clears your mind, masking sweat and sand. You recall inscriptions praising cedar oil's use in mummification and medicine. Mainstream scholars confirm its antiseptic qualities, though whether laborers received regular doses is uncertain. Today, this gift of oil feels like a shield against infection and despair. The lead priest recites another invocation, Thoth, scribe of the gods. Inscribe our efforts in the book of life. Horus, falcon of the sky, lend your keen eye protection to our toil. You close your eyes, imagining that your next misstep might draw the gods' displeasure. The mixture of confident cadence and sacred words steadies your racing heart, faith as armor. Now, each laborer steps forward to touch the papyrus scrolls. You place fingers on glyphs of the cobra, the ankh, and the eye of Horus, symbols of protection, life, and healing. Fringe finds claim that some workers carved their own hidden glyphs into the mortar of pyramid chambers, though mainstream archaeologists argue these were administrative marks only, either legend or fact. Touching these divine images etches their protection into your skin. Finally, the priests pour a triple-layered libation, Nile water, wine, and oil, over a miniature alabaster pyramid. The mixture pools and soaks into the stone model's base. The lead priest whispers a final benediction. May Ma'at, cosmic order, keep chaos at bay in our bodies and our work. With that, the ceremony ends. A profound hush follows, broken only by the distant groan of shifting sledges. You and your comrades exhale collectively, shoulders dropping as if a great weight has lifted. Even the overseer stands respectfully at the edge, whip coiled, voice absent of its usual edge. His nod feels like approval from both mortal and divine judges. You return to the ropes, senses tingling from incense and oils. As you grip the rough hemp, you feel the priest's blessings as a tangible presence in your joints. The overseer's whistle splits the air, and you and your crew lean back in unison. The block groans forward, rock against wood, a monumental testament to human will, bolstered by ritual. Climbing the final stretch of the ramp, you notice a gleam in your companion's eyes, hope. Each heave is fueled not only by muscle, but by faith that gods and priests watch over you. At the steepest kink, sand shifts treacherously, but you plant your feet with renewed confidence, recalling the cobra and the eye of Horus guarding your steps. The slab lurches past the trap, carrying you upward. When the block settles into place, the overseer approaches once more, staff in hand. He taps the block's face thrice, a symbol of final approval, reminiscent of the priest's threefold libation, and steps back with a rare smile. You share a breathless glance with Maku, the veteran next to you, whose quiet nod says more than any words. As you descend the ramp, body exhausted but spirit buoyed by sacred rites, you realize that in this desert crucible, stone and ritual fuse into one purpose. The pyramid stands not only on the sweat of your brow, but on the hymns and blessings of generations. Each block laid in faith carries a story of human ingenuity, devotion, and survival. You grip the rope again, muscles burning, mind alive with the memory of incense smoke, lotus water, scented oils, and papyrus glyphs. The overseer's whistle sounds anew, and with a final, resolute grunt, you pull once more, anchored by both flesh and faith, determined to last another brutal hour under the watchful eyes of gods and pharaoh alike. You barely have time to catch your breath after the priest's rites before you're thrust back into the heart of the worksite to confront the tools of the trade. These aren't mythical implements, but the crude copper chisels, wooden mallets, and hemp ropes that shape every block destined for eternity. Today, you'll wrestle with tools far less reliable than your own battered body. Your first assignment, trimming a newly placed block's protruding edges. A crew of chisel operators kneels along the pyramid's face. You join them. Chest pressed to the cool limestone, a chisel rests in your right hand, copper, its surface pocked from constant use, and a wooden mallet in your left. You position the chisel's blade at the block's uneven seam, hips hunched, legs quivering. With a practiced breath, you raise the mallet and strike. The impact reverberates up your arm, dull and echoing, as copper meets stone, instead of slicing cleanly. The chisel tip bends slightly on the first blow. Copper is too soft to hold a sharp edge under such force. Fringe accounts claim that some master masons used bronze chisels, alloyed with tin for greater durability, though mainstream archaeology finds few examples at Giza. You know why. Bronze was costly, reserved for royal workshops, while copper was the common laborer's tool of choice. You reset the chisel, angle true, and tap again. This time, a thin sliver of limestone peels away, cascading over the pyramid's face into a fine, white dust. Your forearm vibrates, muscles trembling from repeated impacts. Each tap demands the perfect combination of force and precision. Too light, and the chisel won't bite. Too heavy, and the tip flattens irreversibly. You recall a murmur among veteran masons that some heated their chisels in fire, then quenched them in water to harden the metal. Scholars still debate whether Egyptians knew quenching techniques or simply replaced bent chisels as needed, but you have neither time nor fuel for such experiments. Beside you, another laborer's chisel snaps clean in two with a hollow ping. He curses quietly, stares at the broken tool in disbelief, then tosses it aside. You glance at the scattered copper fragments, each one destined for the smelter's recycling hearth. New chisels are scarce. Losing one means fewer renovations tomorrow. You swallow your frustration, return to your block, and focus on installing a fresh chisel, once more molding the mallet blow until the edge bites true. Once each block's edges are trimmed, your next challenge awaits, carving the wooden sledge's runners. A crew huddles over freshly cut palm logs, thick and sturdy, smooth on one side, bark-clad on the other. You take a hatchet, a short-handled iron-bladed tool introduced in later dynasties but rumored to have early prototypes here, and begin shaping the underbelly of the sledge, teasing away high spots that would snag the packed earth ramps. The hatchet's iron edge slices cleanly, each swing sending wood chips scattering across the sand. Despite its power, the iron hatchet is a rare treasure. Most crews employ stone adzes, grinding slowly yet effectively. You wipe sweat from your forehead, mindful not to nick your fingers during each carve. The adz's slower cut might be less efficient, but it spares hands the force trauma and lowers the risk of slippage. Historians still argue whether adzes remained dominant due to tradition or practical safety. Today, you're grateful for any tool that doesn't shatter in your grasp. With the runners smoothed, you reposition your sledge beside a massive limestone block at the ramp's base. Hemp ropes, coarse and fibrous, await your grip. You eyeball the block's perimeter and plan your rope harness. Loops under each corner, crossed over the top, secured with wooden pegs. The quality of these ropes is critical. Ropes frayed or improperly tied can snap under tons of tension, triggering catastrophic slidebacks. You inspect to each length, searching for weak spots. Some fibers are rough with age, others still supple from recent weaving. Fringe records suggest certain workshops produced ropes with palm fiber cores wrapped in flax for added strength, though mainstream finds are inconclusive. Still, you choose the thickest, most intact strands, knot them tightly, and test each section with a brusque pull. No give, no snap. You nod in silent approval and step back. Your final tool challenge today, leveraging the block onto the rollers. A metal lever, a stout iron bar, rests at your feet. Iron was rarer than copper, but essential for this heavy work. You position the lever's flat end under the sledge's wooden frame, bracing your foot against its opposite end. With a heave, you lift the sledge, enough for fellow laborers to slip palm branch rollers underneath. Each slight shift sends pain through your lower back, a stark reminder that ideal lever length yields ideal force. Too long, and the bar bends. Too short, and you risk burning each breath once the rollers are in place. Crews on either side await the pull command. You position yourself aside, wiping grime from your hands before gripping the lever again, this time to unjam an errant roller. You twist and pry, splintered wood groaning, until the log frees itself. It rolls away, wobbles, then steadies as you guide it back into alignment. The crowd's focused tension eases momentarily as the mechanism hums to life. From your perch on the lever, you survey the coordinated ballet of tools and labor. Copper chisels bite stone, hatchets shape wood, ropes bind and secure, and iron levers shift earth-moving sledges. The symphony relies on each piece, each person, each heartbeat. Should any tool fail or any laborer falter, the entire edifice risks collapse. The overseer's whistle rings out, a final note in this midday concerto. He nods approval at your lever work, then whips forward to oversee the next block's harnessing. You set the lever aside, shoulders aching, and return to the ropes. The tool belt around your waist holds your battered chisel, your worn hatchet, and a coil of spare rope, each instrument of creation and potential downfall, gripping the coarse hemp. You lean back, muscles coiling anew. The sled groans forward on its freshly trimmed runners. The block obeys, inching upward toward its eternal destination. Each heave is a testament to tool mastery, your own ingenuity uniting wood, metal, and stone in a dance of sheer human will. As you pull, you reflect on the paradox. These humble tools, copper, stone, wood, hemp, iron, seem inadequate against tons of rock, yet they shape wonders that endure millennia. It is a humbling reminder that even in the harshest crucible, human creativity forges instruments of precision and survival. And now, bolstered by the tools of the trade, you drive the pyramid ever higher, each block a testament to ingenuity, each heave a triumph of tool and tenacity combined. You wipe the sweat and dust from your brow and trudge back into the heart of the pyramid's inner chambers for a task that feels almost mischievous amid all this brutality, carving hieroglyphic graffiti, while your fellow laborers haul heavy blocks and chisel perfect seams. You and a handful of others sneak away into hidden recesses to leave tiny messages, inscriptions that whisper secrets centuries later. These clandestine marks are a rare opportunity to assert your humanity beneath the pharaoh's grand design. Your guide for this covert operation is Maku, the veteran laborer whose stone-carving skills earned him a grudging respect from overseers. He motions you into a narrow passage between massive limestone blocks. The air cooler here, lit only by wavering torchlight. The walls are smooth and freshly cut, yet in shadowed corners you spy faint graffiti, simple sketches of goats, crude size of Khufu's dogs, and smudged tally marks. Some glyphs use actual hieroglyphs, cartouches enclosing labor crews' names, while others are playful doodles meant to amuse or confound future explorers. Maku hands you a small copper stylus, actually a sharpened nail salvaged from broken scaffolding, and a bit of black pigment mixed from soot and olive oil. Your canvas, the flat surface of a yet-to-be-placed casing stone. hiding just behind the work zone. You clear a small patch of dust with your sleeve, then begin tracing your initials in hieratic shorthand, your name enclosed in a simple oval shape. Adjacent, Maku sketches a tiny frog, its legs splayed comically, purportedly to invoke the goddess Hecate's fertility blessings, perhaps ensuring the next shift is fruitful in rations, if not in ease. A voice from behind startles you, one of the overseers, strolling through the chamber to inspect tool caches. Your heart pounds. Discovery here could mean severe punishment, even death. Maku freezes, torchlight illuminating his tense silhouette. The overseer scans the walls, brow furrowed. You swallow, torch trembling in your hand. After what feels like an eternity, he moves on without a word, and you exhale in relief. Proof that some overseers either turn a blind eye or believe these graffiti are merely administrative markers. Scholars still debate whether hieroglyphic graffiti was officially sanctioned for recording crew assignments or existed purely as worker subversion. You decide this is a debate best left to future scribes and press on. Reassured, you deepen your inscription with a small scene. 2 laborers pulling a block, one tripping over a loose rope. It's a darkly humorous caption beneath the more formal tally glyphs. Legend says some workers left prayers hidden in these carvings, tiny appeals to Bes or Taweret for protection against collapsing stones or vengeful gods. You add a miniature ankh beside your frog, hoping that symbol of life wards off both physical and divine wrath. Every stroke of the stylus presses past your calloused skin into the soft limestone, a tactile rebellion that feels almost liberating. Maku supplies more pigment, and you dab it into the carved grooves, smoothing the soot with your fingertip. He pauses, wiping a bead of sweat from his eye, then whispers, "Leave something that outlives the overseer's whips." It's a reminder that while each block will stand for millennia, only these hidden messages capture the worker's voice. You nod, gratitude and fear mingling in your chest. Satisfied, you step back to admire your handiwork, a small tableau hidden behind the pyramid's northeast face, far from Pharaoh's gaze and the prying eyes of supervisors. Beneath the labor crew's official marks, chronicles of dates and cartouches, you've imprinted a fleeting snapshot of your day, exhaustion, humor, and a dash of irreverence. The soot shines in the torchlight, promising that future explorers will rub their fingers and wonder, who carved this? But there's no time to linger. Another whistle from the worksite signals the call to resume hauling. You slip the stylus and pigment into your loincloth, retracing your steps through the narrow passage. As you emerge into the open shaft where slabs wait, you carry a secret pride. You've contributed to the pyramid's silent story, not just as muscle, but as a voice. Grabbing the rope once more, you lean back alongside your comrades. The block groans as it shifts forward, each inch earned in sweat and whispered defiance. You feel the rough rope fibers cut into your palms, and you let the hidden graffiti's spirit infuse your effort. This labor is not only for Pharaoh's glory, but also for the stories of those who built him up. With every synchronized grunt and heave, the pyramid grows, layer by layer, inside its stones. Beneath the grandeur above, your graffiti waits, tiny testaments that even in the harshest crucible, the human impulse to leave a trace endures. And as the sun sets, casting long shadows through the worksite, you pull harder, driven by the knowledge that your secret inscriptions will long outlast every overseer's rule and echo your name across the ages. The sun dips low on the horizon, casting long, wavering shadows across Giza's plateau. But there's no reprieve, only a new terror, the evening inspection panic. As daylight fades, overseers scour the worksite for flaws, wielding their whistles and whips like hawks hunting startled quail. You and your crew trudge toward the central ramp, muscles screaming from the day's labors, only to find yourselves funneled into tight ranks before a line of stern-faced supervisors. A harsh whistle cracks, sharp enough to make your chest seize, and the chief inspector strides forward, whip coiled at his hip but never drawn. His eyes flick from face to face, pausing on each laborer like a jeweler inspecting a precious gem for imperfections. You straighten your posture, though your back feels like fractured marble, and lift your chin. You know that a single misaligned block, a snapped rope, or a slackened pace could earn you a public rebuke, or worse, decrepit housing at the worksite's edge. First, the inspector demands records of the day's output. Overseers clutch clay tablets marked with cartouches, indicating crew names and block counts. One by one, team leaders step forward, rapping their tablets against a rough-hewn stone stand. The sharp clack echoes through the hushed corridor of stone slabs. Your turn comes, and you offer your tablet, still warm from being pressed earlier in the day, to the inspector's closest subordinate. He glances down, eyes flicking over your tally. 17 slabs, you murmur, counting on trembling fingers. The overseer nods curtly, then grunts. Not bad, but next time, aim for 20. His words sting more sharply than any whip. Next, the inspectors examine the ramps themselves. A line of overseers marches up the incline, testing its integrity like visiting dignitaries evaluating royal roads. Behind them, you and your crew must haul a test slab along the ramp's steepest stretch without error. As the first overseer reaches the kink where yesterday's sand pit nearly claimed you, a fresh breeze kicks up, sending grit into every open orifice. You grip the rope with raw palms, knuckles white, and lean backward with everything left in your battered limbs. The test slab shifts smoothly, a minor miracle given yesterday's chaos, and you breathe a silent prayer as the overseer passes without comment. Suddenly, a piercing whistle splits the dusk. You look up to see another overseer pointing at a group nearby. Blocks on their ramp are misaligned, one jutting precariously into the path. Panic ripples through that crew as they scramble to correct the shift. But inspection waits for no one. The chief inspector's eyes narrow, his jaw clenches, and he raises his whip, though he doesn't strike. The mere crack of the whip's tip against the air silences the faltering crew like a spell. They snap into action, hauling stones back into place with frantic yanks, prayers on their lips. Your own crew watches, hearts pounding, as overseers descend the ramp, their sandals kick loose pebbles that clatter against your ankles. You swallow hard, catching your breath. As the final overseer approaches your section, he inspects each rope fastener, running a gloved hand along the hemp loops and wooden pegs. At your harness, he pauses, eyes surveying the knots. You hold your breath, recalling the moment you twisted 2 ropes for extra security only hours earlier. He nods once, as if testing your resolve, then moves on without a word. With a final glare along the ramp's length, each block, each rope, each heartbeat under his scrutiny, the inspector stamps his staff against the hard-packed earth, signaling the inspection's end. As the overseers gather to confer, you and your crew exhale collectively, shoulders sagging under the weight of relief and exhaustion. Yet, the panic isn't fully gone. The threat of the whip and the inspector's silent judgments lingers like a storm cloud on the horizon. Then comes the worst moment, the tally of penalties. Overseers step forward, naming crews that failed to meet quota, misaligned stones that must be reworked at dawn, and rope bundles frayed beyond repair. Their voices ring out in the cooling air, each sentence a sentence in its own right. A neighbor's crew hears 3 blocks short, extra shift tomorrow, and slumps in collective defeat. Another crew is ordered to re-level an entire ramp segment, hours of backbreaking labor looming at sunrise. You feel a surge of guilt and terror for them, even as you're spared this time. Your crew's turn arrives. 17 slabs, full alignment, no rope failures, clear for rest. The overseer's words are clipped, almost dismissive, but you'd take dismissive favor from him any day. Relief floods through you in a rush, flattening your shoulders and loosening your limbs. You muster a tight nod of respect and shuffle back into place as the overseers withdraw, their silhouettes receding like dark phantoms in the dawn's afterglow. In the aftermath, laughter and shaky cheers ripple through the ranks. tiny rebellions against the panic that nearly consumed you. Hands slapbacks, ropes are uncoiled, and toolboxes are opened once more to stow maliciously frayed fibers before sunrise's extra tasks. Amid the jubilation, you catch Maku's eye. He offers a weary grin that says more than any sermon about teamwork ever could. As night falls fully over the plateau, torches flicker to life, casting dancing shadows across the stone faces. You and your comrades trudge back to the mud huts, muscles protesting each step, despite surviving the inspection. You know tomorrow's dawn brings fresh terror. Unfilled quotas carry weight as heavy as stones. But tonight, you are free of the whip's threat and the inspector's gaze, if only for a few precious hours. You duck into your hut, greeted by the pungent mix of mud, dried beer, and your fellow laborers' tired whispers. You collapse onto your reed mat, body aching from neck to toe, mind racing with the day's panics and narrow escapes. Outside, the pyramid looms dark against the stars, a silent sentinel to your triumphs and terrors. You close your eyes, allowing exhaustion to blur the memories of the evening inspection panic into a ragged lullaby. Perhaps, tonight, sleep will come, but tomorrow, the whistle will blow again. You emerge from the inspection's aftershocks into the cool hush of sunset, the horizon aflame with gold and crimson. Your muscles scream in protest with each laborious step as you trudge away from the pyramid, following the narrow track back to your mud hut village. Around you, the dust-choked air shimmers with heat's last gasp, and the endless walls of stone glow like embers left by a dying fire. This is your march home, a slow, painful pilgrimage across sands that refuse to forgive weakness. Your shoulders sag under the day's accumulation of fatigue, grime, and layered sunscreens. The crocodile dung paste has cracked in 1,000 places. The ochre oil has turned patchy, and the clay mask has long since baked to stony flakiness. Each step sends a ripple of agony from your ankles, up your calves, through your trembling thighs, and into your lower back. Yet you move forward, driven by a primal need for mud, straw, and the promise of collapsing into anything softer than sand. Beside you, Amhotep limps along, favoring one leg, the fracture in his toe. Bound overnight with linen strips and warmed frankincense resin, pulses with every footfall. Still, he presses on, pale dusk-light catching the sweat-streaked lines on his face. You offer a word of encouragement, almost there. Though both of you know the night march holds no comfort. Scorpions stir beneath shifting stones, and night winds whip sand into stinging storms. Sleep in the huts may bring relief, but only after this brutal transit. Behind you, Maku, the veteran who taught you the sacred graffiti, steps in near silence. His broad shoulders heave as he carries not a rope but a shard of spare chisel. He insists might help craft new tools come dawn. The weight of that metal fragment, small but heavy, is his testament to preparedness, even in exhaustion. Your fellows think ahead. You nod, though every nod sends jolts of pain through your neck. Above, the sun's last rays slide down the pyramid's face, illuminating its tiers in bands of burning orange and deepening shadow. You recall how its geometry test demanded millimeter precision. Today, every inch you've walked feels off by a mile, yet that same precision, learned under lash and liturgy, steers you home, one foot in front of the other, each movement deliberate against the encroaching darkness. At a bend in the path, the breeze picks up fine grains of sand, whipping them across your face. You press a handkerchief to your mouth, tasting grit and sweat, and peer through the cloth at a scattering of broken tools, a lost hammerhead, a rusted copper chisel, a single frayed rope coil. They lie abandoned at the day's end, casualties of labor as irrevocable as any fallen comrade. Your heart clenches at the silent memorial, these scraps, once instruments of creation, now relics of ruin in the dying light. A sudden caw echoes overhead, vultures riding evening thermals. They circle above the pyramid, silhouettes against the crimson sky. You think of the bodies left where they fell, those who couldn't keep pace, who collapsed beneath the unremitting whip and sun. Their bones now feed winged scavengers, a visceral reminder that here, the boundary between monument and tomb is a single misstep on the ramp. You swallow hard, pushing that grim thought aside. Survival is not yet guaranteed. As the path narrows into the village's outskirts, you glimpse the mud huts emerging like low, earthen tombs. Smoke spirals from hearth pits as wives and children prepare evening stews, thin gruel of lentils or barley, and the scent drifts toward you, a faint promise of warmth and nourishment. Hunger, dulled by stale rations and relentless toil, flares in your gut like a defiant spark. You quicken your pace, ignoring the protest from your knees. Drawn forward by domestic salvation, a group of young children scurries outside their huts at your approach. Eyes wide, faces streaked with soot, mouths agape at the living remnants of another brutal day. They hold torches of palm fronds, the light flickering across their innocent gaze. One offers you a small piece of flatbread, still warm from the communal bake. You accept it gratefully. The unseasoned dough a revelation, you chew slowly, letting it cushion each step as you continue your homeward trek. Amhotep and Maku receive similar offerings, a handful of onions, a bit of salted fish, tokens of gratitude and communal solidarity. You share these meager foods, passing slices in a quiet circle by torchlight. The flicker of flames reveals the fatigue painted in every line of your comrades' faces. Together, you eat in near silence, punctuated only by the crunch of onions and the soft slurp of stale fish. Each bite is a small victory over the day's cruelty. Beyond the village boundary, the pyramid still dominates the skyline, its apex a distant star against the indigo sky. You remember Pharaoh Khufu's inspection, his gaze both burden and blessing, and realize how tiny you feel in the face of his ambition. Yet you also carry proof of your own endurance, the graffiti hidden in the pyramid's veins, the battered tools you still hold, the tally marks etched on clay tablets, all testaments to lives endured and stories yet untold. You stand at the doorway of your mud hut, legs quivering, and pause to savor the moment before collapsing. Inside, the evening stew simmers faintly over soot-blackened stones. The walls, pocked with laborer graffiti, welcome your return. They know your name, your struggles, and your will to survive. You step across the threshold and drop onto your reed mat, every muscle sighing in relief. A neighbor passes a small oil lamp, and you catch its flicker in your weary eyes. The mud walls absorb the light, bathing you in a warm glow. You lean back, legs outstretched, and close your eyes, listening to the low hum of voices, a lullaby of shared hardship, whispered prayers to Khnum for strength, the soft hiss of cooling sweat on coarse cloth. Outside, the night wind carries the scent of date palms and distant incense from the temple precincts. You inhale deeply, tasting freedom and relief. For now, in your final waking moments, you replay the day's horrors and small triumphs, the vicious pulls, the sacred rituals, the hidden graffiti, the inspection's panic, the march home across burning sand. Each memory stings like a fresh cut, yet each also glows with the resilience that has carried you this far. You drift toward sleep, body collapsing into the hut's warmth, mind ablaze with tomorrow's looming challenges. The path back to the pyramid lies under moonlight, each stone step a test of your battered will. For tonight, though, the sands at your door hold you safely, and as your eyelids flutter shut, you find peace in the village's gentle chorus, the soft breathing of your comrades, the distant call of an owl, the quiet promise that dawn will come again, and with it, another chance to last another 24 hours in the shadow of eternity. You wake to a sky mottled with indifferent stars, their distant glimmer a cold counterpoint to the furnace you call a pyramid. The air at dawn carries a sharp bite, a fleeting reminder that night brings relief from the sun's tyranny. Yet your body protests every movement, muscles knotted from yesterday's labors, bones echoing the insistent creak of temples long buried. Today is your final stretch. Sleep under the stars, the culmination of 24 hours in Pharaoh's shadow, and perhaps your last chance to witness this merciless dance between human will and mercenary stone. You rise from your reed mat in the mud hut, joints stiff as ancient beams. Around you, comrades stir, groans and whispers fill the cramped space. A torch flickers in the corner, revealing the rough-hewn walls etched with graffiti, crude sketches of goats, tally marks, and pleas to the gods for a gentler fate. These walls bear witness to generations of laborers like you, each hoping to survive another day. You swallow hard, steeling yourself for the dawn march back to the pyramid's base. Outside, the village lies hushed. A few early risers stoke embers in hearth pits, coaxing feeble smoke into the chill air. You accept a cup of tepid beer from a neighbor, its sour tang a reminder that hydration trumps taste. With a curt nod, you swallow it down, the liquid coursing through your veins like a meager blessing. Every gulp carries risk. Parasites lurk in any water not boiled, but here, risk is a constant companion. The path to the ramp is lined with torches now, their flames small beacons against the vast dawn as you step onto the sand. Your feet sink slightly, each grain teasing the raw skin on your soles. You tighten the leather straps on your sandals, the friction a familiar torture. Behind you, Maku offers a silent nod, and Amhotep limps alongside, toe bound with lint and resin. Together, you join the procession of laborers, a living chain of sweat and resolve, marching toward the great stone toils. At the pyramid's base, the first rays of sunlight strike the ramp, turning its packed earth to glowing gold. This morning light casts your long shadow, stretching toward the heart of the structure you've helped rise. You grip the coarse hemp rope, its fibers memory caught of countless pulls. The overseer's whistle rings sharply, no fanfare, no mercy, and suddenly you're back in the ritual of labor. Your team heaves, body aligned, every sinew straining as the limestone slab groans from its resting place. You feel each inch as a small triumph, a testament to endurance forged through pain. Around you, the chorus of grunts and rasping breaths forms a savage harmony, a savage affirmation that life persists even under Pharaoh's uncompromising reign. Halfway up the ramp, you pause, momentary respite to catch a shallow breath. Behind the pyramid's shoulder, the Nile gleams in a ribbon of light, waters that promise both death and life. You recall yesterday's rituals, the priest's chants, the dab of lotus water, the incense smoke that lingered in your lungs. These spiritual safeguards, woven into your skin, feel fragile this morning, yet as you stand in the pale glow of dawn, you sense their presence like a whisper at the edge of awareness, a vow that unseen eyes still watch over you. Resuming the pull, you guide the block past the midday pitfalls, hidden sand pockets and collapsing timber still fresh in memory. Each triumph over yesterday's chaos feels hard-won, each synergy of muscle and will honed to the razor's edge. Your shoulders burn, elbows tremble, back arches with a dull ache, but nothing here is new. Today's pain melds seamlessly into the tapestry of countless dawns endured before you. At the ramp's crest, you and your crew pivot the block into its final resting niche, wooden wedges tense, ice-cold air shifting into the narrow channel. You press your palms to the smooth limestone, feeling the pulse of ancient geometry that binds the stones. Inch by inch, the slab slides home, humming a low note of completion that resonates in your chest. You lean back, legs quivering, as the block asserts itself into place with a final, gratifying click. An overseer strides forward, examining the seam. His staff taps 3 times, once, twice, thrice, each tap a verdict. Today, no corrections are ordered. Today, you and your comrades have honored Pharaoh's vision. Relief floods you, heavy and sweet as the Nile's evening breeze. You exhale, a sound of weary triumph swallowed by the pyramid's silent walls. But the ritual is not yet complete. With the block set, you're shepherded to a narrow ledge just below the summit's edge. Here, the final task awaits. Sleeping under the stars, you exchange puzzled glances. Sleep? After 24 hours of unrelenting toil, yet the overseer's nod makes it clear. This coronation of endurance marks the trial's end. Crude reed mats are unrolled along the ledge's lip. Each learner's bed laid parallel to the horizon. You settle onto yours. The narrow platform a hard cradle. Below, the pyramid's face plummets in a drop so steep your stomach flips, a vertiginous reminder of fragility. You stretch your legs out, toes dangling into open air, and feel a dizzy thrill. The sun, now fully risen, warms your skin, draining the last sleep from your limbs. The overseer crouches beside you, his voice low. You've endured the day, now sleep and be ready when the torches fall. He gestures toward oil lamps already lit around the ledge in iron holders, tiny flames flickering like captive stars. Then, as quietly as he arrived, he steps away, vanishing over the pyramid's shoulder. Silence settles, broken only by the distant murmur of Nile currents and the soft flutter of ibis wings returning from nocturnal forays. You lie back, spine curved to match the stone's slope, and breathe the desert air deep into your lungs. The horizon unfurls in reef-like ripples, gold fading to orange, orange to rose, rose to lavender, each color a prelude to night's cool embrace. As the sun arcs overhead, you slip into a fugue of exhaustion and awe. Sand clings to your sweat-slicked skin. Mat presses into your back, and the world tilts between toil and tranquility. You memorized every jagged angle of the ramp this day. Now, in this suspended moment, you memorize the curvature of the sky, the whisper of distant palms, and the echo of your heartbeat. Around you, laborers succumb to slumber's deceptive grip. Snoring murmurs ripple through the god's scaffold, each breath a testament to survival. In this precarious cradle of stone and dust, you feel a kinship with the pyramid itself, both monument and mausoleum, both testament to giants' ambitions and pioneers' perseverance. Your last conscious thought trails off into a prayer of thanks, for hands that held the rope, for muscles that strained, for spirit that endured, and for the fragile haven of this star-nursed ledge. Sleep takes you then, pulling down the veil between pain and peace. Night deepens as the pyramid's edges vanish into velvet darkness. The sky above shimmers with countless stars, serene witnesses to your long ordeal. Each twinkle feels like a gentle pat on the weary shoulder, as if the cosmos itself cradles you in its vast, silent arms. The air cools, carrying the soft lullaby of desert winds rustling through distant palms. Your breath slows, each exhale a sigh of release. Muscles that screamed through the day now soften, surrendering to rest. The coarse reed mat beneath you yields to your weight, and even the stone's unforgiving edge seems kinder under the hush of night. You feel the tension drain from every joint, replaced by a hush of calm that seeps into your bones. In this sacred stillness, memories of harsh sun and flying whips recede, leaving only the comforting glow of torches and the reassuring murmur of companion breaths. You drift between dream and wakefulness, images of yesterday's triumphs and perils dissolving into a serene tapestry woven by the night. Here, at the pyramid's lip, you stand on the threshold between human striving and cosmic eternity. Allow your final waking thoughts to settle on gratitude for a body that endured, for hands that held strong, for comrades whose shared struggle forged bonds deeper than stone. Let your mind rest on the promise of dawn, a new sun to rise on renewed strength, newfound solidarity, and the continued journey toward eternity. Close your eyes now. Feel the cool air wrap around you like a soft blanket of peace. Every inhale nourishes. Every exhale releases what is no longer needed in this gentle descent. Find solace in knowing you have endured, that you belong to a story as ancient and enduring as the stones beneath you. Sleep well, brave soul. You have earned this moment of calm. Sweet dreams.